Start that all over. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Let me go ahead and get this work session started. And Ms. Johnson will have you tee it off, please.
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners, staff, members of the public, hopefully that are joining us online. For the record, Faye Johnson, City Administrator, I will be leading the presentation here. So this is our budget development work session that we put in place this fiscal year. So I want to kind of go over what everyone is going to hear this morning. We're going to do an overview of the FY26 budget balancing strategies and key dates, and then proceed to an overview of the FY26 budgets as it relates to the quality of life operations and the internal governance budgets, and then move on to next steps. So the reason why we're doing the overview of the FY26 budgets, is because of the manner in which the city budget process works. We do line item budgeting for the most part. In very few cases, there are some program budgets that we do. And given that we do incremental line item budgeting, the budget for the current fiscal year becomes the base budget by which the next fiscal year budget is built. So it's important to have a fundamental sound understanding of the FY26 budget, and then look at how we need to navigate for building the FY27 budget. So with that, moving right on, as I indicated, for the FY26 budget, fiscal year budget, and that's the budget that we're in right now, the current year's budget. If you look at the slide, you will notice that it is built on the FY25 revenue, which was $264 million, and given that revenue and expenditures must balance. So our budget for FY25 was $264. And let me just underscore that this relates to the general fund only. So we then look at how much new revenue, general fund revenue, comes into the budget for the ensuing year, and then that builds the budget for that particular year. So as we look at, on a high level, the new revenue for FY26 general fund totaled $19 million. And I'm not necessarily going to go through the various categories that comprise that $19 million, but $19 million of new revenue for the current year's budget is what we bought in. So when we look at the expenditure side, again, same concept. We looked at FY25 expenditures and then looked at the mandatory or the obligated expenses that we had to include in the budget for this year. And then for this year, we looked at critical needs of the operations within the general fund. And the total of the obligated and critical needs that were being considered in terms of building the FY26 budget, the current year, was $23.2 million. Now, for those of you who've just followed the numbers, you should have come to a very quick conclusion that there was an imbalance between the $19 million of new revenue that we bought in for FY26 and the $23.2 million in expenditures and critical needs that we wanted to dial into the budget. So that raises the obvious question: what did we do to bring the FY26 budget into balance? So then we had to look at what was that budget gap as we started putting the tentative budget together. Again, we had $23.2 million in new increases and $19 million in new revenues. So we had a budget gap of 4.2 million, or another way of putting it, the budget was out of balance in the tune of 4.2 million. And I think because of all of the budget discussions, this may have got lost in translation as we went through the budget process. We did have operational reductions to balance this year's budget, the current year's budget. We took 1 million out of the general fund budget that we had started 2 prior years for road paving. And that was one of the highlights that was mentioned at the work session when we had the capital improvement program that was presented. We shifted that 1 million out of the general fund, and the CRA was in a position to pick that 1 million up. For police, CBA vehicle requirements, collective bargaining agreement, which is contractual, the 1.2 million that we should have included in the operating budget for FY26. We took that out. We were in a position to pick that up out of one-time funding. It is a contractual requirement. And then for police overtime, we have been budgeting police overtime on an annual basis at 4 million. We reduced police's overtime budget, and that is in this current year's budget, by 2 million. So there are or were operational reductions that were made in order to balance the current year budget. The reduction in the police overtime budget was premised on the basis that we were adding 27 new positions, and based on the process by which officers are brought online and the number of vacancies that we had in the police department, we felt it was that we could accommodate having reduced the overtime budget, because if the police overtime exceeded the 2 million that we now have in the budget, there would be enough unused salary funds that would then backfill what was needed for police overtime. So in reducing the base budget by the 4.2 million, it brought us to where we are today in terms of the FY26 adopted general fund balance budget of $283,563,050. So while, the budget in and of itself, is just based on numbers, at its core, the budget is a storybook. It tells a story. It's a storybook of the policy decisions that are supported by the board and is translated into numbers. But I think it's always important to not just tell our budget by the numbers, but tell the budget story. So when we look at our budget story for the current year, and having made the operational reductions, we maintain all of the quality of life programming and initiatives that we have had here within our city, that high quality of life that our residents have come to expect and enjoy. We were able to maintain all of the staffing for the back-end operations that keeps our organization running. But most importantly, we were able to then put a lion's share of the additional revenue towards the board's #1 priority, and that's public safety. We were able to beef up the positions within fire and police to better maintain the level of service to keep pace with the transformational growth that we're seeing within our city. So we added 35 new positions within police, and this was unprecedented. We had not done that as far back as we were able to research in one fiscal year, and of that 35, 27 were police officers. In fire, we added 7 positions. In addition, we had to bring funding for the 15 firefighters that had been funded by the SAFER grant 3 years prior. They had to come into the general fund, and if not, those positions would have had to be cut, which we know that was just not a consideration. We did also include in the fire assessment fee budget 4 new firefighters. So when you look at trying to meet the board's number 1 priority for our city, public safety, all total of about 43 new positions that we added to public safety. But when we look at the budget story, and let me go back, the remaining $7.4 million was to meet our contractual obligation and other operational increases outside of public safety. But as you know, we were in a position to tell what I think was a tremendous budget story, particularly looking at achieving the board's number 1 priority. It fell flat, or short rather, I would say, on the story that the board wanted the budget to tell. The board wanted part of our budget story for FY26 to include a millage reduction for our residents and businesses that pay ad valorem taxes. And here is why that became such a challenge from my perspective. When we look at the heart of the timeline for the adoption of the current year budget, under our normal process, we bring a tentative balanced budget to the board at a July work session. For FY26, it was the July 22nd where we went through the proposed balanced budget. September 8th was the first reading of the budget, first adoption hearing, and then September 24th. So at the point that we brought the July balanced budget to the board, we had already implemented the $4.2 million of operational reduction. And as the city administrator and, you know, the mayor and I had spirited discussions behind the scene, I really didn't feel that we were in a position late July going into August to then reset the general fund budget to find additional operational reductions to accommodate a millage reduction, and to be able to do that without it impacting front-end operations. And so when I say we, administration did not support at that point trying to do a millage reduction. And if you will recall, part of the debate about a millage reduction also included adding in the 5 police officer positions that was not included in the budget. And I think it got lost also in the midst of the discussion that had we added in 5 additional police officers, we would have had to cut something else to accommodate that, on top of cutting something to accommodate the millage reduction. So we didn't get to where the board wanted us to be in terms of that millage reduction being part of the budget story for FY26. And that discussion, you know, was actually healthy in that, you know, it forced administration to take a step back after we got the budget adopted, you know, and to look at the process. You know, how can we design a process by which we can involve the commissioners on the front end so that they have the time and opportunity to think about what level of a millage reduction is desired for FY27, and we can then get that into the budget on the front end in terms of the tentative budget and not be crippled by time constraints where we have already balanced the budget and then are in a position where we don't want to unravel it to then try to work in whatever is needed for a millage reduction. So this is a new process. We set in terms of strategic goals, to enable proactive commission engagement at the beginning of the general fund budget development process. Another strategic goal is to facilitate the commission's decision on the level of millage reduction for FY27. Also facilitate decisions on corresponding reductions in any revenue increases if needed. And then also as the fourth goal, to keep the commission apprised of the state tax reform initiatives, which if it were approved, it would impact the FY28 general fund budget. So here we are today, beginning to get into the heart of this discussion. I want to emphasize that the purpose of this process that the board is going through this morning is for informational only. It's to help build or enhance the commission's understanding of what impact there would be on the department's budgets if we get in the situation of having to make operational reductions. To the extent that the board can be as well informed as possible on the department's budgets at a high level. We're not looking to make the commissioners, understand going down to the line item detail, but to have that high level increased understanding and knowledge of department's budget so that you can take that into consideration and it help shape your position on what you would or would not support if we find ourselves in a situation where we have to make operational reductions. And I'm underscoring the operative word here of if, in that I am cautiously optimistic that because the FY27 budget is not going to include the number of positions that we had to put into the FY26 budget, and that our tax values will continue to be at least around the percentage that we have seen, that we should be in a position where we can absorb a millage reduction without having to make operational reductions. I'm cautiously optimistic, but that remains to be seen because we don't have the numbers yet. So for the purpose of today's discussion, we're looking...
Can you just repeat your cautious optimism, please?
I am cautiously optimistic, of that, just with, keeping the budget numbers in my head here. But again, the numbers will tell us whether or not we are in that position. But be it as it may, if we find ourselves in the position of having to make operational reductions, those reductions would be made from either or a combination thereof the quality of life departments, budgets, or the internal governance department budgets. So when you look at those two category of budgets combined, it represents in personnel costs about 49% of the budget, and then material and services about 27.5%. And those are the two groups where the budget operational reductions would be made. The other slices of the pie, are not areas that we could consider for operational reductions. So it would be in the category of personnel and or material and services. So here is what the board typically sees when we look at the budgets, as part of the public adoption hearings, you just see the departments listed and then what the budget allocation is for each department with the breakdown of what percentage of the general fund that it relates to. But for the purpose of this discussion and then moving forward, if we get to that point of having to make operational reductions, we put the budgets into a different format. And that is, we grouped it by reduction flexibility categories so that the board can have an understanding of a department's budget, what portion of it is total discretion of the board at will if we need to reduce those budgets, and then terminable discretionary, which means that they can be cut, but it is subject to canceling contracts which has certain cancellation provisions or clauses, typically between a 30-day notice or a 90-day notice. And that if we get in a situation, let's say hypothetically, where we want to cancel a landscaping contract, we don't have to, the decision does not have to be made in June or July. If the board finds itself supporting the cancellation of landscaping contracts, we would simply put the vendor on notice that we are executing the provision to cancel the contract, and then if that's a 90-day and it falls beyond October 1, we then would prorate what that savings would be. And then the third category is mandatory, which is non-discretion. So that category of expenditures, is required either by statutory, regulatory, or ordinance, or it's related to a critical core function of a department, wherein if it were cut, the department would not be able to carry out its mission. So for the purpose of operational reductions, we really would be looking at the group of expenditures that are considered at-will discretionary or those that are terminable discretionary. So looking at starting with the quality of life operations, development services headed by Anna Marie, engineering by Kevin Volpert, housing and CD by Jade Green, library, Lisa Hathaway, Parks and Rec, Leah Rockwell, and Public Works, Leon Pender. So if we look at development services, and again, commissioners, the high-level overview here is tied to the budget data sheets that you were provided earlier. So that kind of gives you, more detail here. It's too small to put that on the screen. So this is in line with what you have in the budget data sheet. So if you look at the two together, it will help you to be able to follow the discussion as well as the detailed breakdown of the expenditures in your data sheets. So if you have the two, if you want to pull those two side by side. So again, if we start with development services, that total budget is just a little over $3 million. The portion of it that is discretionary is $2.5 million, the lion's share, and you're going to find this consistent theme throughout the departments. Most of the department's budget is going to be personnel. $2.5 million, or 85% of that budget, and that translates into 19.5 FTEs. The discretionary that is terminable is a very small percentage of their budget of $155.5 thousand. I want to take a moment, make certain that Yes.
Thank you. I just have a question that will apply to all the pages, but in the internal service fund charges, I know it's in the red, so it's not something we can cut, but some of the departments, they're in the millions, and the listing is, I think it's IT and human resources and finance. Can you just explain a little bit more about what that includes? I know that it can't be cut, but I'm just curious because I didn't understand the description of it.
Okay, I will come back to that because it does apply across the board. Yes, but I will come back to that explanation. So don't let me get lost here in the presentation and forget to explain that. So are we ready to move on to engineering's overview?
Dive deeper.
I'm sorry.
I just said any other. I was just seeing if there are any other questions before we start diving deeper. Okay, you can proceed.
Thank you. So when we look at engineering, engineering has a $5.1 million budget. $4.2 million is discretionary. That funds 32 FTEs. The discretionary that is terminable is a very small portion of that budget of about $24,000. Moving right on to housing and community development, a $5.2 or $5.3 million budget rounded. The discretionary portion of the budget is $4.4 million, and that funds 41.3 FTEs. The discretionary that is terminable represents 322,000 plus of the annual budget. So moving on to the library. The library's budget is $6.7 million. $4 million of that budget is discretionary, and it funds 39.5 FTEs. The terminable discretionary part of the budget is 314.5 thousand. Moving right along to Parks and Recreation, which is one of our larger departments. Parks annual budget is $27.6 million rounded. The discretionary part of the budget is $24 million. And as one of the largest departments, that funds 161.6 FTEs. The terminable discretionary portion of their budget is 148,000 plus. For Public Works, which is another one of the largest operating departments in the general fund, the budget is $27.2 million. The discretionary part of the budget is $11.3 million. And as you will note, different from the prior departments, the terminable discretionary part of Public Works budget is pretty significant, and it represents $13.3 million rounded, and that's based on how the department's operations are structured. So by summary, your quality of life operations represent $75 million of your general fund $283 million budget. The lion's share of it is our personnel, which is $51 million or 67%. The portion of the $75 million that is terminable discretionary, meaning that for the most part, it's contracted out services. That represents $14 million plus, or about 20%. Now, before I turn it over to the commissioners for discussion with the departments on the internal service fund, because IT is set up as an internal service fund, each department has a certain number of devices and whatnot that are tied into information technology. And so we go through sort of a cost allocation plan of what portion of that of the IT's budget is allocated out to departments. So the departments have an internal service fund charge that is related to the informational technology services and devices and all within their department. The other non-general fund departments also have an internal service fund that is charged back from the IT's budget. So you will see that in all of the departments' budgets. You will see an internal service fund charge. Bridget, our CFO, wanted to add something to that. Come right on, because I may not have articulated that.
Good morning, Bridget Souffrant, Chief Financial Officer. You did great. It's the same concept with IT as well as...
A little closer to the mic, please.
Sorry. It also includes our health insurance and liability insurance that is charged out to all of the internal departments, as well as our fleet. So it's the same concept that Ms. Johnson laid out for IT, but it also includes fleet and health insurance and liability insurance.
Thank you. I completely forgot about the other funds that are included in the internal service fund charges. With that, Mayor, I'm going to turn it over to, if we want to have the commission presidents kind of lead the discussion with the departments, we can operate at the pleasure of the commissioners.
All right. Now, commissioners, if you want to drill down deeper into the actual departments, we have department heads here. If you want to, if you have a question, make sure you direct it to, say, who the department is that you want to answer, and we'll go from there. So, Commission President Peduzzi.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'd like to thank you for the presentation. I think it was helpful. The numbers, it certainly looks kind of daunting because of the fact that the majority of our budgets are for personnel. But let me ask the city administrator a preliminary question just to clarify about your cautious optimism, because I think I might have missed it. Are you cautiously optimistic that we may be able to do a slight reduction in the millage, or are you cautiously optimistic that we'll be able to absorb the increase in costs in this budget without having to make cuts?
I am cautiously optimistic that we will be in a position to implement a millage reduction without having to make operational reductions. And let me kind of go into why I am cautiously optimistic. And I think, again, this got lost in just the spirited discussion that we had on this year's budget. When you look at how we balance this year's budget, we had 1.7 million that came into the general fund related to the 15 firefighters. So that's already baked in this year's number. We do not have that situation for FY27. We also had 4.7 million of expenses, new expenses in this year's budget that related to the new sworn positions in police and fire and the other professional positions that are baked into this year's budget. So we don't have that going into FY27. And when you just look at that 1.7 and 4.7 million, had it not been for that, we would have been in a position to have a millage reduction for this fiscal year budget, which was the board's desire. And part of why I did not come on board with a millage reduction at the point that we were discussing it with the board was that it would have put the board and the organization in a position where if we're going to do a millage reduction, which of these critical needs do you not support? Or if we go into the base budget, where in the base budget would you support us having to make reductions? And so I'm cautiously optimistic that we will have enough room in the general fund new revenue that it can absorb a millage reduction and we not have to have operational reductions because we don't have the same situation going into FY27 with loading up for public safety and other mission critical needs.
Thank you. Follow up?
Yes.
So I see under the personnel categories of these charts that every one of them says that cuts would or reductions would adversely impact service delivery. I mean, they all say the same thing, and I understand. I mean, this is an unpopular discussion. It's not a discussion that I want to have. I feel a little relieved that you're cautiously optimistic and that maybe we'll be able to do a millage reduction regardless. But if I could just ask you, you put together these numbers and your staff put together these numbers, and also talking about the adverse impacts. Do you feel that there's any non-essential services or non-essential departments, not that any department's not essential, but we're talking about other than police, fire, trash collection, the things that are really essential to everyday life? Do you think there's any departments that could absorb even just small reductions in staff, whether it be library, parks and recreation, or one of the other departments?
I don't think that any of our departments can absorb a reduction in the staffing levels without there being an impact on service delivery. And I say that because of this. If we look at it retrospectively here with what the organization went through back in the 2009 economic downturn, the general fund departments all total lost 100 positions. When we fast forward, when we got to the economic impact from COVID-19, we had to reduce the budget by 11 million. Part of that reduction included, I believe, and don't quote me on the number of positions, but around 50 positions in the general fund to balance the FY22 budget. It was the impact, of the pandemic. So departments have only started getting some additional staffs starting in fiscal year 23, because we found ourselves in a position where employees were working extraordinary hours just trying to maintain the workload. I think it's a misnomer in thinking that when we think about the growth within our city, that it primarily and perhaps just on face value, it only impacts public safety. It only impacts fire and police. And while that may be the direct operations that are impacted, the growth in our city and in terms of our employee base, it impacts all of the other departments, particularly the quality of life, because they're outward facing, direct services to the public. So if you look at all total, I think within the quality of life operations, although we were able to do some staffing up starting in fiscal year 23, it's been very, very modest. With the additional cuts that were made in FY22, before we got to FY23, we had, and this is back in that we don't involve commissioners on, but we had what we considered an exodus of employees who on their exit interview said they were leaving to go XYZ, not for more money, but because the workload was too heavy and they needed to have more of a life balance because they were just burnt out. And being in a position where we're losing good employees just simply on a workload basis because they're working long hours, not getting paid overtime, that's was the driver with then starting to put back some positions starting in FY23. So with where we are now, to avoid if we find ourselves in that situation where we got to cut back on employees, my strong recommendation would be to the board is that we decide what service we want to just cut altogether as opposed to cutting back on services and then stretching staff so thinly where they feel a sense of duty and responsibility that I still have to put in, the 60, 65, 70 hours every week to try to maintain a level of service. And I know that's probably long-winded, but I wanted to give you context.
And I think what I hear you say, Ms. Johnson, I don't want to put words in your mouth, is the determination that needs to be made at this level by the commissioners who have fiscal responsibility for the city is not so much looking at personnel, but looking at actual services and making decisions based upon which of those services you feel do not have the highest priority or will be cut. So rather than choosing an arbitrary number of people, I think I heard you say, let's look at the services being provided and make determinations on which of those services would no longer be provided. Is that a correct?
I think it's a combination thereof.
Okay.
Because the two are so intertwined because of the way that we budget. We don't do program budgeting where we take, let's say, for example, park maintenance. The park maintenance does not have its own program budget where it's $1 million for park maintenance, and then that relates to 6 employees because they do a number of things. Employees just are assigned where they are needed in terms of the maintenance of different parks, not by park. So if hypothetically we have to do workforce reduction and staff layoffs, the Parks and Rec will determine how many employees would be laid off, and then the impact to which of the parks in terms of the maintenance, the level of maintenance. And it just may be something, let's say if the parks are being maintained weekly, because of the layoffs, we may then have to go to a monthly schedule as opposed to a weekly schedule. So that's how the two interconnect.
Okay. And I think, Commissioners, one of the reasons we have the department heads here in front of you is for you to get a chance to ask them directly, whether it's personnel or other expenditures that you think or did you have a question about. So rather than Ms. Johnson kind of answering it from a 30,000-foot level, we wanted to make the department heads available so you could dig even deeper into their particular budgets and ask them directly what expenditures or what personnel you think could be cut. So that is one reason why we're doing this, and it's also why we're doing it now, as opposed to waiting until later in the budget process, so you have full opportunity to get the information you need to make the decisions you have to make. We'll go to Commissioner Warren. Commissioner Ward.
Thank you, and thank you, Madam Administrator, for your comments, because I think that they echo what I was thinking as it relates to staffing and quality of life and looking at whether or not staff is overburdened and whether or not we're able to actually provide the services to the community when they come in. Now, the people that I hear from regularly are people that often compliment our team. They think that our team is amazing, very knowledgeable, resourceful, and responsive. But they also believe that the amount of work that is on the team is beyond the team's ability to address in a reasonable time. So I hear from people that have delays in permitting. They have delays when they're meeting with our different services and departments. But again, the most recent compliment I got was for Angela Vaughn. And they were just talking about how knowledgeable she was, but that the project that they were bringing before her was weeks away, but their need was immediate. So I think that we need a deeper dive into some of the services that are provided so that we can look at what may not be utilized as frequently as other services, but I caution us to look at reducing staffing. I think that we have been growing. We've addressed that with our proactive vision for safety, but we need to ensure that that is included for quality of life for our residents, for our small businesses, and for our staff that are in here every day that are addressing the public.
Commissioner Ward.
Thank you, and thank you for everyone for being here. Hi, guys. So I actually would love to hear from the directors, and just a general question for each of them is, where have you seen year over year recently your biggest increase in expenditure in your operations?
Do you want to just call them out one by one, or?
I mean, left to right, right to left, I don't care. I mean, Leon, you look excited.
You just called him out.
Good morning, Leon Pender, Director of Public Works. I think for Public Works, the biggest expenditures have been with fleet maintenance costs. That will
Field maintenance costs?
vehicle maintenance costs, because the cost of purchasing vehicles are steadily increasing, and then the maintenance is steadily increasing as well.
Thank you.
Ms. Rockwell?
Good morning, Leah Rockwell, Director of Parks and Recreation. I think our probably our contractual services, as those contracts go back out to bid, when they come back in considerably higher than they were in the past. So that's where our expenses are definitely jumping. So.
Ms. Hathaway?
Good morning, Lisa Hathaway, Library Director. As Leah said, it's our contractual. However, it is personnel for the library. I think we've seen, as most of you know, over the years, we have provided pay increases for city employees, and that has been extremely beneficial for our library staff, as well as I know increase is in health care and stuff like that. So that's really where we're seeing more of our increase is in personnel.
Thank you.
Ms. Green?
Jade Green, Director of Housing and Community Development. I'd have to agree with Lisa. We haven't had any major jumps in year over year outside of personnel. And as of recently, we only have added the Housing Finance Manager, of which we're still trying to fill. So.
Mr. Valbrecht?
Yeah, so in the engineering department, I would say our greatest expense is utilizing professional services to subsidize the vacancies that we have at some critical positions in our department. We currently have about 7 vacancies, and we have to hire consultants to help us deal with a lot of the traffic engineering reviews, as well as the right-of-way permit reviews. And we've been looking and still trying very hard to fill these positions, but to supplement that and to be able to keep up with the demand for the reviews, we do need to have consultants on board, which costs us a significant amount more than what the positions cost themselves. Those vacancy amounts that are not they're budgeted, but they're not actually being paid for, we're utilizing professional service budget to be able to pay for those services in our general fund budget. So that's probably the biggest thing that we have.
You want to follow up?
With just because Kevin, when you talk about, I mean, I understand that, and I know you have vacancies. Do you think that if you, given those vacancies have been kind of persistent, if you went and longer term services contracts, do you think that that would decrease? Because I feel like you're going service by service and engaging for specific projects. Or is it, hey, no, we already have these longer term contracts and we're coming in and just infilling when we need?
No, we have contracts with consultants, and we're utilizing those, as best as analytically as we could in order to fulfill that service that we need. So we get consultants that understand our right-of-way permitting. We have consultants that understand traffic engineering. We're utilizing them through our general service contracts that we have. But it's expensive to pay a consultant versus a city employee. And we may still need to even utilize consultants to help us with those services as well, even if we had those services filled. So, we had a traffic engineer and we still were utilizing a consultant to help, but now we're paying more because we don't have a traffic engineer at the moment, and we're trying to get that position filled as well. So it isn't really varying on the types of contracts that we have underway. It's just utilizing those services with consultants that generally cost more than a city employee.
And on that point, Kevin, and maybe even other department heads, when you have these unfilled positions, I know Ms. Green mentioned that she had an unfilled position that she's been trying for a while. Are we finding the difficulty in filling the position because of the salary range, the salaries that we're offering? Are we underpaying people and therefore, or at least the positions, and therefore we're not able to hire the right people? Or are there other issues involved with the delay in getting those positions filled?
I think because these are very unique positions, they're like the only ones that are in the city, like a traffic engineer or a city transportation engineer, that the pool of candidates out there is not as vast that would want to potentially come to work here, or they're always busy doing something else. I think when we do find somebody, I think we try to be as effective as possible in offering a competitive salary. And with all the other benefits and the wherewithal that you have working here at the city, it's an intangible factor sometimes that helps. And I mean, that really did help us, in many cases. The traffic engineer was here when Veronica was here. I think she recognized the fact that, this was a very nice place to be. She was working as a consultant for us, and we hired her directly. So I think the salaries being offered may have some influence in it, but I don't think it's the greatest influence. I think it's the low level of candidates that are out there looking for work elsewhere from where they currently are. That's our biggest problem. And we're trying extremely hard. We're utilizing other recruiting consultants to help us look for people. And, they're spending all the time doing all that. But, I'm seeing a little bit more progress in that just very recently. But we haven't hit the finish line yet. We haven't golden tempoed yet.
I see what you did there, Kevin.
And
Ms. Green.
yes, I'll speak for our department. When I came on 90 days ago, we had 12 vacancies. And as of this morning, we are down 50%. I think it's a combination of having active leadership in the recruiting process with HR. But as far as finance, I mean, Bridget will probably speak to this, it's competitive.
Okay.
It's competitive. One thing we did notice about this description is it had a CPA requirement. So we removed that, and we've gotten a lot more candidates, and we'll have interviews soon. But I think it's definitely competitive as far as finance and other positions within departments. It does require a pull for us as a director to be active with HR. They can't do it by themselves. So, yeah.
So when, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Kevin or Jade, when we find that maybe adding to the salary might help us close the deal, there is you're seeing flexibility from HR and from finance to make that happen.
Absolutely. At what capacity they can, as long as it doesn't create compression.
Well, let me weigh in on that. Okay. So, we maybe 2 fiscal years back when we did the salary study, we end up doing essentially a 20% increase in salaries across the board. And so that put us probably in the best competitive position that we've been in. We also increased our pay grades. I think it is a rare exception when it comes to professional level positions that we are bringing folks on board at the starting salary. Department directors have the discretion on their own to pay 5% above the starting salary. Anything higher than that has to have the city administrator's approval. And on a routine basis, I am approving starting salaries that are at the midpoint or even higher. And we have to do that to be competitive. So I don't think that the salaries are a big reason for why we are not competitive. I think it's the market and then the specialized positions that are typically harder to find. But I'm going to let Anna Marie weigh in terms of the impact to development services.
Yeah, for development services, that is only planning and business tax. The building division is not part of the general fund, so that's handled separately. What I have seen is staff definitely is the highest increase in cost. But I did some numbers this past week in comparison what was the staff level for the planning division. In 2012, we have 10 planners processing projects. In 2026, we have 18, so that's an 80% increase. However, when you measure the increase in workload, it's substantial. Just by revenue of the planning, that again, revenues in the planning division does not really equate to the amount of work that the planners are doing with each of the projects. We're getting much larger projects right now. Before we used to get, I don't know, a shopping plaza. Now we have a 25-story multifamily building that has way more work, but we charge the same fee. That's something that we need to work on. But the 80% increase on the planning staff position does not represent in terms of the fees. If we compare the fees from those 2 years, the increase in fees is almost double the fees that we receive in 2026 versus 2012. So,
which is an indicator there's more work to be done.
yes.
Okay. Now, can you address, I don't want to get off track here, the question that the commissioner had of all department heads? And I don't know if you want to repeat that for development services. I think that was the only department that didn't respond.
Yeah, the biggest increase or expenditure you're seeing. I think you might have said personnel.
Staff, yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, for us, it's staff.
Did you have a follow-up?
Well, I think it's interesting you talk about that fee, and maybe that's part of a follow-up discussion that we talk about, because again, targeted when you come to how we're looking at taxes above board is across everyone. But if we're talking about a specific fee for a big developer, I think that is something that we could as a body look at and discuss. And if that really is an impact to your staffing and there's a correlation there, then that makes sense to really kind of dive in and see it.
Yeah, that analysis is already underway. Anna Marie and I have talked about that, so we're doing a deep dive into our fee structure to make some changes to that. So that'll be coming back. But we got to do the analysis, see how we compare to other municipalities in the market, et cetera. But we are looking at that in a very intentional manner. Okay, did you have any more follow-up for the general question that you asked the department heads?
No, I mean, I have other questions. But
Well, okay, let's see if anybody else has questions. Any commissioners? Commissioner Fox.
Thank you so much for the presentation, for everyone being here. I think when I remember back to 2020 and we were going through this discussion, my memory is that we didn't have to reduce any positions. Administrator Johnson, you mentioned that we had 50 positions. My memory is that we didn't have to eliminate them, that we just didn't fill them at the time, that we were kind of adamant that we didn't want to have to lay off anyone in Parks and Rec, especially in the library, and try to find cuts in other places. Is that correct?
You're correct. So back then, the first couple of proposals to the board to balance the budget did include layoffs of staff in the libraries and Parks and Rec, and that was rejected by the board, in addition to cutting vacant positions. So what we end up doing in the end to balance the budget was that we went to a deeper cut of the vacant positions as opposed to occupied positions. And some of those were critical positions that departments needed, and that resulted in, when we started giving back positions in FY23, it was the critical positions. But you're correct.
Yes.
Thank you. So my question is, based on what Anna Maria was saying, I guess there's probably some positions, I'm thinking mostly maybe in your department and also maybe in Public Works, that are revenue generating positions, so that we have fees or something that is coming from those positions, which might be different than in other departments. So obviously I think that those are essential, but I would hope that we're not in a position that we need to cut any staff at this point. This is definitely looks a lot different than we did in 2020. But I'm curious if there are any departments that feel like there aren't critical positions, as you were mentioning, Ms. Johnson, at this time. It sounds like we're still understaffed and just trying to get back to where we were. So, but just curious if anyone has anyone that they think
Do
there's
you
not
want to
a
go
critical
down and ask,
position that
you
is.
want to be specific about the departments
Sure.
that you're addressing it to, or all departments, or?
Well, I don't know any positions except the ones that were mentioned today that might still be remaining to be filled, but are there positions that are in the budget waiting to be filled and we're just have a placeholder that maybe we don't need them until we fill them?
Go down the line again. Mr. Pender, if you want to address that.
Leon Pender, Public Works Director. In Public Works, we're still looking for drivers. That's ongoing positions that we're looking for. In Fleet, we're looking for some mechanics, but those positions are definitely needed.
Ms. Rockwell?
In Parks and Recreation, we have several vacancies in the Parks Division, particularly maintenance workers and our tree trimmers and irrigation techs. So irrigation techs are very hard to find. You can talk to any municipality in Palm Beach County, and they are just very difficult. So right now we have contracted with an irrigation company to help us with the shortfall that we currently have. As far as our tree trimmers, we have rewritten our job description to as well as we're looking at getting in different size trucks to allow us to do the tree trimming that we need to do that doesn't require the CDL that we're having a hard time finding the staff to fill those roles. So we're changing our equipment to allow us to be able to hire those positions, and hopefully we'll have some people to do that. And then those are our critical, and then we have one that we just keep advertising and hoping that we have somebody qualified walk through the door. But they are already budgeted. We're just waiting for the right candidate to come through.
Ms. Hathaway?
So we're fully staffed, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that they did an analysis of salaries for librarians, and they were able to bump the starting salaries. And so we actually saw with some of the vacancies 2 or 3 years ago that people started to apply for those from the county, other municipalities. So thankfully we're fully staffed. Would we love more employees? Of course. I think most people feel that way, but yes, we're fully staffed, and it is because of the support from the city to recognize the need to do that salary analysis for our positions.
Ms. Green?
I would say absolutely HCD could not. The current vacancies right now are being managed by multiple other positions. Most of those roles are completely outside of their current position, but they're helping to assist with these vacant positions. And as soon as we're fully staffed, I think that will create a more balance within our department and other departments that also help us out, including finance and legal, that are helping with our code and finance work within the department.
Mr. Volbright?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with what Jay just said, because it is, with the vacancies that we have, everybody else has to pick up a lot more duties and roles that they need to be able to fulfill. And so everybody in the engineering department has to be very diverse in what they have the capabilities of doing and their skill sets, because we really need everybody to jump in and help out. The director and the assistant director do a lot of things that other positions really should be able to do, but we don't have the positions to be able to do those. And so we have lots of work on our plates that we always have to undertake because of the deficiency in the people that we have working for us. And so I don't think that anything would be worth giving up because of the fact that we really need that to be able to continue to do what we're doing. As the workload continues to increase, it would be even more critical to get rid of any of the positions that we have currently vacant.
Aponte?
Yeah, for development services in business tax is fully staffed, and I think that is in response to a strategy that was implemented over the past years about career progression. So allowing the staff within there to train and just fulfill those kind of do progression in their own positions so they don't leave. So that has helped. In the planning division, we are missing a couple of positions, and we are also trying to promote people within to fill those positions and give them the opportunity and train them where they're doing that, and trying to just fill those positions with a lower level. But it's difficult to find the staff to fill those positions. We have a planner, principal planner open for 6 months, and we couldn't find a candidate. And then we promote somebody from inside, and now we have a senior planner position that has been open for several months, and it's difficult to find candidates that are qualified to do the job.
Did you have a follow-up, Commissioner?
Thank you. How do we estimate if we have a contractor? Kevin, you mentioned you have 7 contractors right now, and they maybe cost more than an employee because they're. I understand how that works, but how do you budget for that? Are you budgeting? Is the budget for 7 staff members, but there's just an additional pool for contractors in your department, or how does that work?
We're not utilizing consultants to handle all 7 of the vacancies. We're utilizing them specifically for the right-of-way permitting and the traffic engineering reviews. And we budget for that by asking for a professional services budget in our general fund. And sometimes we even have to utilize some of the capital funds and be able to pay for those kinds of things, because there's professional service allocations in the capital fund, because, you know, traffic engineering, right-of-way permitting relates to capital things, but that takes away from being able to go fix a road or something like that. We really need to be able to have that in a personnel cost versus a capital cost. And that's very, very important. Ultimately, it would be nice to be able to balance that out such that it's all covered by the positions for the city. And the capital money can be used to go build stuff. And so getting to that balance is a goal. It is always being pursued very diligently, but you know, sometimes it takes a turn that we have to turn after it. So I hope I answered that question.
Okay, anybody else want to weigh in on that question?
May seems to want to.
Let me turn to, I'm sorry?
The HR director seems to want to weigh in.
Okay. Go to the mic and introduce yourself, please.
Good morning. Renee Govig, Chief Human Resources Officer. I would be remiss if I didn't put out there, one of the big constraints that we have in this recruiting is finding places for folks to live that don't only live in the area. We have lost some exceptional candidates who accept the job, they're excited, they get here and they can't find a place to live. So that speaks a lot to what Kevin was saying, is our pool is small. We don't have the ability a lot of times, just because of where we live, to bring people from other parts of the country. And they want to be here for sure, but it's just sometimes cost prohibitive if they aren't already here or have a family member or that sort of thing. Thank you.
Emphasize the need for more workforce housing.
No pressure.
Right. Okay, President Peduzzi.
I'll follow up on that, the need for workforce housing. I think we have 2 different competing needs. There's people that would love to work downtown and live downtown, since that's pretty much where all of our work is centered. But then even in the greater area, if they're coming from outside of the state, that poses a problem too, just because it's expensive everywhere now in Palm Beach County, not just downtown. But I think there certainly is a need for more workforce housing. We have heard from our commission aides that some of them would love to live downtown to be closer, especially to cover things, you know, last minute. And it's prohibitive at this point. And I promised them that I would bring that up in a meeting, so I'm bringing it up, that we need to take a look at that and see what we can do about making sure there is enough workforce housing. And thank you to the Human Resource Director for coming up. And I was wondering, actually, if we could, or if it's beneficial for us to also hear from legal, finance, HR, and IT, to a lesser extent, maybe internal audit, because the department's so small. The mayor's office, commission office are smaller. But could we also hear just a general response to some of these questions from legal, finance, HR, and IT?
If I could ask to hold those questions till we get to that next panel, because they will all be on the next panel. Thank you.
Those are the internal governance departments.
Correct.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. All right, we'll make another round. Commissioner Ward.
I have a follow-up to Commissioner Fox's question, and it was actually directed at Leah, because you mentioned that too about contracts, and I know we do have various landscaping contracts throughout the city with the CRA and just general city. So do you feel the same way? Is that, hey, it would be cheaper for us to actually have these people in-house versus contracting? Because that's a discussion that I hear a lot, and that's why I'm bringing that up is, why don't you just contract it out? Stop having all these employees contracted out. But I'm hearing the opposite, actually, that it's more costly.
We would need a lot of employees to do what our contractors are doing because of the linear miles of roadway that they are maintaining. Additionally, the safety level, I'm sure our risk manager would say, we'd rather have our contractors in the middle median on North Lake than our employees, if at all possible, right? So you would probably have to bring back our whole section of median and right-of-way staff that back in the 2006 era, there were probably 35 employees that just did medians and right-of-ways for the city, and that they were under Public Works at the time. So I don't know if it would be a cost saving with that number of people, with all the insurances and everything else. I think using our contractors right now is our most efficient methodology.
Follow up?
No, I'm not on that.
All right, do you have an additional question?
Yes.
Okay.
The same as the increased expenditure. What are the biggest efficiencies that you've seen or that you would love to lean into? I mean, we have so much technology coming out, and so given everything that's being discussed in like a general frame, have you been able to institute anything that have been cost efficiencies, or are there things that you would like to initiate that may be an increase initially to your budget, but that would have long-term efficiency gains?
Yeah, you can start.
One thing that is the world of the day, right? We are trying to figure out if we can implement some artificial intelligence tools in the planning review and the building review. Initially, just for the applicants to kind of evaluate their projects before they submit. So when we receive the submittal, those have already taken care of those minor things that maybe have been missed by the applicant. So they are better quality when we get it, so the review takes less cycles. So we're exploring that as an option.
Thank you.
Mr. Valbrand?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with that philosophy as well. However, it's not as readily implementable because of the complexity of the stuff that you're looking at. I certainly think that as we go forward, that's going to, utilizing an AI sort of a resource to be able to help with that is definitely going to make it more better to be able to achieve that. But I think that it's a progressive thing. It isn't something we can just immediately do. And I think as we work towards doing that, it's going to make it much easier to do and more efficient to do, but still takes the staff to be able to deal with all that. We just can't push a button and let somebody tell us, a machine tell us that everything's good. So I would say, it's going to probably take a few years for us to get to that point.
Ms. Green?
For HCD, definitely once we get fully staffed, but we're also, between my assistant director and I, trying to get our staff fully trained on a number of things to do with our federal funds. So we're able to deploy different reports and things internally instead of constantly utilizing an external consultant to monitor our programs and do our environmental reviews. In addition, we want to create a more efficient schedule for deploying our notice of funding opportunities for the federal funds that we get each year that can create a more efficient way of managing projects and folks applying for those funds and different opportunities. For sure.
Ms. Hathaway?
So when we moved into this new building in 2009, it was, during the economic downfall, and we had visions of I believe at that time, adding 10 more full-time employees to the library, and that didn't happen. And so we took advantage then for what you see in the urban, the library mate, where you can actually return your materials to this automated cloud-based system that we received funding to just upgrade so we can continue to use that. That actually at the time reduced the need for 5 full-time employees by implementing that. Because you may not be aware, the process of taking someone's material, returning it, checking it in, activating a security bit, putting it on the shelves takes people, and libraries are people-centered. So we continue to use that technology. We continue to use the self-check technology that allows you to check out your book. We actually had that in the old library before coming to this library. So those are some of the efficiencies that we have put in place at our library, so we don't have to add 10 more additional staff for the 600,000 plus materials that are being checked out at the library. On top of that, we are, as my assistant director is always pointing out, we are people-centered. People want to come visit the library to see people. With that being said, we are taking advantage of AI in a very smart and safe capacity as city staff members, writing the grants that we've been writing for years and plugging them into ChatGPT to make them consistent, to make them bolster them a bit, and that saves staff time doing that. So those are just a few examples.
Ms. Rockwell.
So we're working right now on we're in the process of purchasing a software program that is going to be for all permitting within our department, which includes the Film Commission. The Film Commission, we at least twice a day get a request for a permit to be able to use a part of the city for filming. And that has to be routed through police, fire, building services. So all of our permitting right now we do manually, where we have to get everybody together or get the person requesting the permit for events or whatever, that they have to go to those departments or we get them all in a room together. This way it's going to route automatically to everybody when that permit comes in. So it's going to save a lot of time, and things that have possibly fallen through the cracks, this program will help us catch those things. That's an efficiency that we're really looking forward to. But like the library, we are a people department, and you can't, it takes a village to raise a child, and we are that village that helps raise children in this city. And you can't, well, you could mow grass with robots, but we're not there yet in the society. We do have one robot in our department that actually helps line fields. So yeah, it's a little hard to mow and take care of green spaces without that human touch. And many of our parks employees who are not recreation employees actually develop relationships with people that are out in the parks while they're walking and running and bringing their kids to playgrounds. So there is that sense of community that we create in our parks. So I don't know how to be more efficient with IT, with AI with that, but we use it for the same thing with writing grants and responding back to our residents to make sure that what we're writing is clear and well written.
Mr. Pender.
So one of the things that we're doing in Public Works, well, we'll look at route software in terms of routing the solid waste trucks to make sure that we're more efficient. That's something that we continuously to look at very closely to make sure that we're routing trucks in a manner to make it more efficient. In terms of our fleet maintenance, we're looking in terms of how can we create work orders and systems to make those more efficient, so it's not necessarily a piece of paper walking over here, a piece of paper walking over here, and things like that. And with our assistant director in Public Works, Amy, we collaborate a lot of times with different departments to make sure that we're more efficient in terms of with engineering, in terms of the roadways and CRA. So we look a lot of times to save time. We have different meetings to make sure that we're all on the same page before moving forward.
Any follow-up to that question? Any other questions, commissioners? Commissioner Fox?
Thank you. Well, first, Leah, I wanted to ask about the Film Commission. That's kind of cool. Is that something that's new, that you say that we're having so many inquiries?
No, it's not new. It's since I think the I think it was 1980s, 1990s, that there's an agreement with the Film Commission and most municipalities, if not all, in Palm Beach County, where they're allowed to request areas to do filming, and it's something that we don't charge them for, but it takes a lot of staff time for us to accommodate their requests.
Yes.
That was actually going to be my question about, I was looking also at your budget with the pavilion and just wondering if things like the Film Commission, that sounds like it takes a lot of time when you're talking about routing it to all these departments, following up on it. Is there a reason we can't charge a fee for that? And likewise, the pavilion, I mean, I know that a lot of nonprofits love to have events there because it's so inexpensive, but just looking at the staff time that's involved, is that somewhere that we could have additional revenue coming in?
We'd have to really look closely at the contract. I don't really have an answer whether we can or we can't, but historically, we have not. But with this new software program that we are putting in place, those permits will go in there and they'll route a lot more efficiently.
Leah, do you have, or can you make available, I guess, historically the revenues that have been generated by the Lakes Pavilion? Because as I understand it, those revenues have increased significantly over the past few years.
Yes, but we can provide the Lake Pavilion revenues, absolutely. They're not tied to Film Commission, but we do have those.
It's a separate issue.
Yeah. Oh, yes, absolutely.
Questions she asked.
I mean, yes, thank you. That would be great.
President Peduzzi.
Thank you. On that Film Commission issue, I think we'd have to be careful if no other municipalities are charging that fee. We wouldn't want them to avoid the city of West Palm Beach and of filming in the city of West Palm Beach, because that also gets us exposure that's important in other areas as well. So I think we'd have to be careful there to make sure that we're in line with what the other municipalities, but I think that goes without saying.
Mr. Sylvester, Commissioner.
I'm not sure which one, but okay. Mr. Pender, I just have a question maybe you could answer. Under contractual services, that amount, can you tell me, or do you have an idea of what percentage, you can hear me, what percentage of that is
You need to speak in the mic because we're being recorded, yeah.
Sorry. What percentage of all of those under contractual services is solid waste services? Like, is that a large amount?
I do not have the numbers right off the top of my head to tell you what the percentage is just for solid waste right now, but I can definitely get that and get back to you.
Thank you.
And get that to all the commissioners, please. Okay. Any other questions for this group, commissioners? Commissioner Ward?
Actually, it's for Administrator Johnson. And early on, you had talked about that 19 million from the fiscal year 26, and you had 7.4 remaining allocated to fund contractual and operational expenses. There's so many slides. Where is that broken down as to what that 7.4 million went to?
I have that breakdown. We didn't include that, but it would be operational expenses on contracts outside of fire and police. So we have like maintenance contracts. All of the contracts have usually a 3%, some may have a 5% escalator. So it would be those items. It would be the cost of living adjustments that we made. So in all of the other departments outside of police and fire.
Okay. Mm-hmm. But so technically then, sorry, follow up.
Yes.
Technically then it is broken down
Could
within
you speak
these.
closer to the mic,
Sorry,
please?
it is broken down within these other summaries, budget breakdown. If you're talking about cost of living, the personnel expenses that are broken down within the various budgets that you provided us.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It's already baked into this year's budget.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the quality of life departments? Okay, thank you, directors, for you taking your time and responding so freely with information. Thank you very much.
Mayor, if we could break now so we can get the next
Yes,
round
that's
panel
fine.
up, and if commissioners want to partake in any
Commissioners,
of the
there are
refreshments.
refreshments in the room back there if you want to
Thank you,
take
Seth.
advantage of
That went
those.
very well.
ahead and begin this next portion. I think the president is around somewhere.
Do you want me to go ahead and get started, or do you want to wait
No,
for
let's
Commission
go ahead and
President?
get started.
Okay, we're going to move on to the internal governance operations overview. And these are the back of the house operations. Finance headed by Bridget Souffrant, HR by Renee Govic. We have information technology by Paul Jones, internal audit by Beverly Mohasso, and the city attorney's office headed up by Kimberly Rothenberg. And while we, from a budgeting standpoint, we include the commission office and mayor and administration, we know that both of those functions kind of operate, with quality of life in terms of direct services to our residents, as well as setting policy and making executive decisions. So to get started here with the overview, we will start with finance. Finance has a total operating budget of 6.8 or 6.9 million for rounding purposes, 5.6 million rounded. The lion's share of that budget, 81%, is discretionary. It represents 40.5 FTEs. A small portion of it is the terminable discretionary of 439,000 plus. Moving right along to human resources, the HR annual budget is 2.7 or $2.8 million rounded. The lion's share of that budget again represents employees of 2.3 million, 16 FTEs, which is in the discretionary category. And then there is a portion of that budget that relates to terminable discretionary of 145.9 or 146,000 if we were to round it. Next is information technology. The annual budget for IT is $23.2 million rounded. The discretionary part of the budget is 7.8 million, which represents a total of 51.10 FTEs. The terminable discretionary category is 1.5 million of the budget. And then I do want to highlight here with IT because it's sort of an anomaly to what you see in terms of the percentage of the budget that falls within non-discretionary of 13.8 million, 60% of the budget that we categorize, as being critical, core function. And, if we find ourselves in a situation where we have to consider operational reductions, I am asking for the board's consideration to not include information technology from this perspective. From my vantage point, when we look at police and fire in terms of the protection that they provide to our residents, safety, life safety, and then protection of their property, I view IT as that to our organization. When we think about what's happening with cybersecurity attacks, AI, and the fact that IT is the lifeblood in terms of data systems and all for the entire organization, I don't think that we want to put the organization in a position where theoretically, if we cut back in the information technology department, the risk that it will put the organization into. And while I pause, with having to make that recommendation for the board's consideration, I really think that we need to give serious thought if we find ourselves in the position of having to make operational reductions, that we exclude information technology just because of the fact of the risk that it will put our organization into. And I know that the other directors probably would not like to have me make that exclusion for information technology, but as your city administrator, I would recommend that you consider that if we find ourselves in that position. Moving right along, the internal audit department's budget is 1.2 million, rounded. Again, the lion's share of that budget falls into the discretionary category of 724,000, the terminable discretionary category of 149 or 150,000 if we were to round it. And then the city attorney's office. That annual budget is 5.7 million or 5.8 million for rounding purposes. The discretionary group for that budget is 4.9 million, which represents 29 FTEs, and the terminable discretionary part of that budget is 475,000. So at this point, Mayor, I will turn it over to the commission. Well, let me back up here. Let me give you the high-level summary before I jump to the discussion with the board. For the internal governance, the summary, 47.9, or let's say $48 million rounded. Again, as have been articulated, the lion's share of the budget overall for that group of operations is discretionary of 27 million. Then the terminable discretionary of 3.3 million, and then the non-discretionary is 17.5 million. The lion's share of that is the 13 million for the information technology department. And with that, Mayor, I will turn it over to the board for the commission staff discussion.
Thank you. And commissioners, we'll just open it up. We have department heads here, and we'll open up for any questions you may have.
Well, we did have one general discussion that we were holding from the commission president for the panel of department directors.
Yeah, President Peduzzi?
Yeah, I think if we could start with Commissioner Ward's question from before the other panel with regard to, I believe it was the largest area of increase in costs, and whether you feel that there's any opportunities for reducing the budget or personnel.
Now I'm on. I will start off. Good morning, Bridget Souffrant, Chief Financial Officer. For the Finance Department, personnel has definitely been the largest increase over the last couple of years, but also my contractual services. Finance is unique in that we have a lot of what we do that is regulated by state statute or other regulation through GASB and different accounting functions. So my contractual services can be our external audit report where we have to pay for the auditors. It can be our single grant audit, our contract for cost allocations that go into the budget, our actuarial reports for the various pensions. All of those are housed in here, and you can see in either yellow or red the distinction on those different contracts. So those are items that we work with procurement and increase annually per the contract. To staffing and that question on the vacancies that I think was also with Commissioner Fox's question. I just want to put it out there and maybe inform the commission if it's lost during the budget process, because this happens, early on, that annually Ms. Johnson gives direction on what the departments are supposed to do when creating their budget. And oftentimes, as it comes to personnel, that direction is don't ask for a new position unless you are giving up an existing vacant position. And I say that from the lens of efficiencies and creativeness. The departments are actively reviewing the vacancies. We are also actively reviewing how we are doing business and coming forward to the table saying, okay, this position has been vacant for a period of time. What am I missing here? Why can I not fill it? Can I tweak it in a way that still allows me to operate in the same service level or greater and be able to fill it, because I know the burden is in the rest of the department because the work is still being done. So we are actively looking at that. And oftentimes, whether it's in the mid-year personnel review that you see, you'll see people taking, okay, these 2 vacant part-time positions, I'm going to propose this full-time position. So there's a lot of navigating that happened through that process. So to that end, I do not have vacant positions that I can give up right now. I actually have a quarter of finance that is vacant right now. So I am actively working through that. I can handle that question now or jump to that later if you want. But the vacancies is definitely something that we are working through actively.
Govig.
Renee Govig, Chief Human Resource Officer. Quite honestly, if you look at our budget year over year, it remains pretty flat. The thing that has increased are the contractual obligations. One thing that you may not think about is the cost of doing background checks has exploded. And the cost is much higher, our volume is much higher, and that would be what I would say has been our biggest impact as far as increases. But for the most part, we've stayed very flat year over year.
Mr. Jones.
Paul Jones, Chief Information Officer for Information Technology. Our biggest cost, without question, I think you can see that, is contractual. Every item that we purchase, every part of the infrastructure, whether it be servers, whether it be the firewalls, whether it be security, all comes with a contract. And additionally, we manage all the enterprise contracts, such as Oracle, Microsoft, Kronos, anything that's enterprise, we manage. And I would say thanks to the negotiating team, and a lot of times led by Miguel Gamino, that we have done a tremendous job in negotiating those. But we're seeing now, with the cost of equipment becoming a little bit more, contracts are being raised. But again, we really work hard to negotiate those. But that's the biggest part. And as far as staff goes, we're fairly well staffed. But what we've had to do is, as technology evolves, we haven't added a position since I've been here, but we have adjusted them. For example, when I first came, we had a position called computer operator, which doesn't exist anymore. And so we had to adjust those and make those. We had inventory, we had compliance, we had a lot of things that, in now AI, and what we've really worked hard to do is create those and build those from within. But that's been the biggest thing, but it's the contracts. There's just, again, every infrastructure, what happens is you have 2 things that evolve. You have maintenance, which we have to keep things running, and then you have implementations. Things are constantly changing, as I think you know, when you're asked to reboot and do all these fun things. But it's constantly changing, so you're constantly implementing, you're constantly upgrading. And so those 2 things balance, and we balance those with what I call our staff, but I also call complementary outsourcing. And so we actually save money doing outsourcing because we can do it in pieces of time. We have it now, it's forever. So what we leverage those resources on a lot is all the implementations. But it takes a while, and we have really done a good job of developing now people that we can trust to do those things. So that's really where our biggest expenses are.
Ms. Mahaso.
Beverly Mahaso, Internal Auditor. Our biggest expense has been in personnel. I think it's been a long-standing topic for our office that we are understaffed. We just recently hired someone, so that's dropped us down to just 2 vacancies, and we're a small shop, as you can see. But our biggest expense is our personnel. We were able to get like the 20% that Ms. Johnson mentioned, the increase that actually helped us. to be able to hire some people at a higher starting salary and to keep the person that we did have increasing their pay to make them competitive. The other piece that I'm noticing too is that in terms of our professional services where we contract out audits, the amount budgeted has remained the same. And that's not an issue per se, except what I'm seeing is when we go out and we ask people, hey, well, what would you like to charge us to conduct this particular project? They're asking for a lot more than what they used to, let's just say 5 years ago. So I take that opportunity to remind them that we are government, we can't afford the increases that they're trying to insist on. And that's how we've been able to just keep it flat, but it's really more of negotiating with those contractors.
Ms. Rothenberg?
Hello, good morning, everyone. I would say that, and clearly from the chart that was put up on the screen, our largest expense in the department is personnel. What you may or may not know is that we have 29 FTEs within the department, and that includes the legal department and procurement. So we currently have 12 lawyers. For those lawyers, 4 of them concentrate specifically on defending the city and or pursuing litigation on behalf of the city in your traditional type of tort type liability issues. We also have 1 specifically allocated workers' compensation lawyer. We used to hire outside counsel and some time ago found that it would create, in fact, a savings to the city to not pay outside counsel, but rather have that position in-house. And the benefit to that is that person not only handles the workers' compensation, but because we don't experience large amounts of workers' comp claims, they also are free to do other types of work like code enforcement, legal research, and other things as assigned. So that's been beneficial to the city to bring that particular person in-house. We also have 1 lawyer who's allocated specifically for labor and employment type issues, a specialty niche area, and we have 1 lawyer that is specifically identified to provide police with services on an as-needed basis. We also have 4 lawyers who are allocated, actually it's 5 altogether, allocated specifically to all of the transactional work within the city, it also including the ordinances and resolutions that you see every 2 weeks in your commission chambers. We review and or draft all of those documents through the transaction team. There are 8 support staff that's allocated to those 13 lawyer positions. And then we have 9 total procurement staff that does all of the procurement work for the city within the department. As it relates to contractual, we have some contractual services that are housed within our budget. It's only 8% of the budget. One of those items is your lobby team. The lobbyists, and those numbers have all been pretty flat. There's been a few increases over the years, but the lobby team has most recently, within this last year, I think, obtained $5.5 million of funds for projects that the city is working on. So the expenditure of the $280,000, while you may save some money, certainly doesn't save anyone any money, I don't think, over time. We also, within that 8%, pay your special magistrates. We have a little bit of funding for appellate lawyer, bankruptcy lawyer when we need information or advice on technical issues. But our budgets remained flat, except for those raises or increases that have been awarded by the commission.
Okay, we'll work around the room. Questions? Commissioner Ward?
Just because legal was the last, I'll ask my legal question. So when we talk about, obviously, I noticed the special magistrate and enforcement, but obviously some of that comes back from the violation fee that's associated with it, but that doesn't necessarily come back to your department.
No, those are general fund revenues, and we were just allocated a certain dollar amount to pay for the services for the special magistrates that are housed within our budget.
Okay. But when from an accounting perspective, if you're talking about, if that, looking at the precise number, 126,000 in theory, that would kind of be paying for itself in turn, just going to a different fund.
It's still within the general fund. It just is not directly attributed to the city attorney. So if we get into the conversation of reducing any items or any contracts, like finance has a couple as well, where I have expenses within my budget, but I have correlating revenues to that too. We would have that dialogue at that time. We just didn't prepare for that level today.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Front, you were going to allude to, you put a bookmark on the topic you wanted to discuss.
Sure, thank you. Recruiting. So Jade mentioned it in HCD. Finance is becoming very difficult to recruit for, and I don't believe it is the pay to what Ms. Johnson mentioned earlier. We do not have people coming in to finance as a career. And so what we have noticed with our vacancies as we dove deeper, because it's really becoming an issue that I have a quarter of the department vacant, on the staff level being able to handle the workload, we were able to identify that the candidates that are voluntarily applying for these positions because they are in fact looking for roles are not of the caliber that I can bring in. And I say that twofold. I have too many vacancies and too high of a workload that I can't bring somebody in that I have to train up significantly. And so that means my candidate pool becomes much narrower because I can't, when I have staff that's already burdened by holding 10 or 11 vacant positions, they can't also have somebody that doesn't know government accounting. You know, traditional private sector accounting is different than government accounting. I know debits and credits are the same, but trust me, it's vastly different. So we have taken and have finally been able to see some success by working with a headhunter. So a specific recruiter. I know that we have companies on board with HR. Respectfully, even those companies right now on a temp level, we are not able to get temps that can be successful because we've been supplementing our staffing with temps and finance as well. The recruiter and the headhunter comes in a different fashion. They are and should be inundated in our community. So they know the companies that haven't yet announced that they're doing layoffs because the companies maybe reached out to, or there's, under conversations that they're figuring out. They are also able to directly go to a different municipality or a different entity and say, hey, are you looking for a job? And actively get somebody to consider our position. They are on the same side selling West Palm Beach. They are selling West Palm Beach. They are selling me. They are selling my department because they know me and they have those conversations as well. So with that, I just have 2 positions within the budget division right now that we are hoping we will have accepted job offers through utilizing this headhunting concept because it's been very difficult.
But I take it that's not inexpensive either. With that
It is a percentage based off of their first year salary for my existing contract. Everybody's is different. But given the vacancy savings that I have, that's what we'll end up paying for that contract.
If I could add a footnote to Ms. Souffrant's comments. Typically, our practice has been, and it's the practice of most municipalities, that you use headhunters for your director level positions and up. But because of the difficulty that we have had recruiting highly skilled or specialized positions, administration made the exception to allow departments to use headhunters, to find people for those positions. And so, we're beginning to see some success with doing that, but it does come at a cost. But departments have been absorbing the costs through salary savings within their budgets.
Commissioner Warren.
Thank you. And it's resonating that cutting staffing should be the last thing that we're looking at. It looks like there's truly a need across the board for qualified staff. My question is, how are we considering our last year budget, last year to date versus actual, and determining whether or not there's any opportunity to make fiscal changes based off of what we're actually utilizing.
Can I cover it? Okay. I didn't want to take it from you if you wanted to grab it.
And do you want that on a department by department basis or just sort of higher
Just
level?
a high level
Mr.
overview
Front,
from
yes.
Mr. Front.
So the standard, again, directions and requests that go out to the departments is, they should be reviewing their budget to actual on a monthly basis. And I know most of them are. And we have, because we're having conversations on that through communication and collaboration among departments. So that's how we start to find if something isn't going right during the year from a finance side. So they should be reviewing their budget to actual regularly, and we're about halfway through when it comes time to budget development for the next year. So in addition to reviewing what's happened in the past, they have to know what they have left to come. So they have some idea of forecasting for the remainder of the year to see how close am I going to be to what I actually budgeted. And then they have to identify what their needs are. They know what their needs are within their department. They have to identify what their needs are, but then they have to make those needs fit within the direction from administration. So and I'm gonna grab two random accounts. If their professional services, bad example, if their equipment maintenance needs to go up $15,000 because they are aware that they have an older fleet or a problematic vehicle right now that they can't change out in the next year, they will have to reduce a different line item within their budget by $15,000 in order to increase the appropriate line item. So there's this puzzle game or a weighing game where they adjust their accounts based off of, okay, I came in under budget here, I can handle shifting dollars from this bucket to that bucket. And that high level is what every department is doing and preparing to bring to Ms. Johnson. I have these pain points, or I know you've asked me to do this, but this is really difficult for me to do, and here's why, and have that conversation.
Mayor, if I could add a footnote. So in addition to what Ms. Souffrant just articulated, as part of the annual budget process, department directors go through city administrators' budget reviews, and I can tell you it's their least popular thing to do across the board, although they try to not tell me that. And during that process, I actually look at budget trends from prior fiscal year. So if I see a line item, and let's just take travel, for example, where that line item, the majority of the funding, has not been spent, and there has to be a good justification why I would support leaving that line item at that level. So typically it may be that a conference got canceled for that particular, the prior fiscal year that is now back online, so I will leave it at that level. Or in some line items, the costs come in near the tail end of the fiscal year. In the budget review, it's like in the middle. So if they can provide a sound justification why money is not being expended, we leave their budget at that level, but if not, then that line item is reduced.
Thank you.
Follow-up, Commissioner?
No, thank you.
Okay. President Peduzzi?
Along that line, I would it just would concern me a little bit that, and I've heard, not necessarily with this municipality, but with another municipality that I dealt with, the department heads would say, hey, we got to use it or we're going to lose it. And so we certainly don't want to encourage them to spend money just for the sake of spending it because they're worried that for the next year they may lose it. So I don't know if it encourages the fiscal misuse of funds just to make sure that it doesn't get taken away the next year.
I would say that, it is not set up where it discourages them, because the only area where I see typically we would have that situation, let's just say with supplies. If they have not ordered supplies and then they want to manipulate the budget, they could say, well, we need to stock up, on ordering supplies so that we don't lose that funding. But supplies tend to be such a nominal part of the budget. It's hard to play the budget trick, if you will, if you're talking about conferences where travel and whatnot, because the request for going to a conference has to ultimately come across the city administrator's desk. And so if it's not a conference that was presented as part of their budget review, that requires a very, very strong justification. Why is it that you're now identifying this conference to go to? And if I get a sense that they're identifying a conference so that they won't lose that money, then that will not fly, and then that's a whole different discussion. But I have every confidence in our department directors that they do not engage in use it or lose it because they don't want to have their line items cut.
Follow up, Commissioner.
May I add to that, Mr.
Oh, yes,
Mayor?
absolutely.
So the process that I described was from a departmental level. The process that Ms. Johnson described is her direction to budget staff to prepare her for that meeting. So the departments are looking at their annual budget. Ms. Johnson wants the trend where we have been looking finance and city administration, and we're prepared coming into these meetings with the department directors. And also to give you further data and information about your comment, we can see in the system when dollars are encumbered. So if there's a known contract in place, but money hasn't gone out the door for that contract, that budget is allocated and encumbered. So we can come to the table, and we do, with Ms. Johnson on, these dollars are dollars that are not allocated for anything right now. We need to ask why. We need to understand why this budget doesn't have an encumbered dollar amount that's under contract and why it hasn't been spent. So those detailed conversations come into play on why do you need to carry it forward? Why do we need to have it within the budget? So those do definitely happen, and we have the data that can support that.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. I mean, just as long as we're encouraging, if you don't need it this year, you still may need it next year. And if the department directors can explain that hey, just because we didn't try to just go ahead and spend it for the sake of spending it, but we may need it next year, and we just happened for whatever reason didn't use it this year. So thank you.
Commissioner Ward.
And I feel like we continue to talk about vacancies, and while we're already spending those dollars and we're talking about trying to not spend, it seems like that's an efficiency that we continue to need to meet, is that we need to find the right people. And I know that private sector in itself, headhunters are expensive. I get that. What are we doing actively and engagement? Like I can only use my other day job. We're already interviewing in the spring for 2Ls getting out of the summer of their second year. So that's literally a year and a half down the road for them to come intern at Big Law. And so in that regard, like, what are we doing working with our local universities here, pulling in? I get it. I understand the frustration of needing to train, but if we don't take that step or at least enter in, some of my best experiences were credit internships. They're not necessarily looking, maybe it's a small stipend, but those credits that you're not paying for a class, you're getting credited day-to-day jobs so that they can learn financing from a government perspective. What are we doing to leverage PBAU, PBSC, FAU to make sure that we're engaging with them just like our police started recruiting when we were shortage on them, for these other departments to say, hey, come get an early look here and hopefully trend them out through university so that we grab them first dibs and they get college credits.
So I'll let Renee speak to this, but I will say I just had an intern, so the first intern here in my 4 years, and the first opportunity where we were even approached by a university for an accounting intern. And Jack was great, had no knowledge of government, had no idea what he was stepping into, learned a lot, piqued his interests, may pivoted his career, probably not. He was looking for tax accounting, very different than what we do here. But we did take the time to train, give him exposure to the various divisions of finance. He's been to a couple of the work sessions here too, so he can see how local government works. But that was my first request that actually made it to the departments from the university.
Thank you. We have active relationships with all of the universities in the area. Also going up to Florida State, University of Florida. For example, I have lunch planned with 2 different days this week with young people from universities to talk to them about what is government about? Why is that maybe something that you want to look at? Because I don't know if you remember, mine was 800 years ago when I was looking for a career. I would have never thought of government. And it is a fabulous thing to do and to play into that and lean into that. I always keep business cards with me, and if I see somebody that has hustle and spark in their eye, I give them a business card and tell them to look at the website and to call me. And we've gotten a few that way, but I encourage everyone to do that. As far as the universities, we go to every job fair that they have. We put on our big smiles and give out our tchotchkes, so to speak. They're not the top. We are very cautious of what we spend on the tchotchkes, but we do give them out and send them home with these ideas. And everybody gets a card. If you have any questions, you call me. And I love talking to the folks, not just young people, but the people that, you know, have that spark in their eye. What are you doing? Do you like what you're doing? Maybe, I always say, we've got about 150 openings right now. Why don't you look and see if there's something that you're interested in, and then we can talk some more, and I can send you the job description or whatever. But those kind of dialogues are what we really have to have, because to Bridget's point, in the accounting finance world, the universities are actually dissuading people from going into accounting because they don't have professors. The professors can make so much more in private industry as a CPA that there's, I think it's a second year class that they purposefully try to cut the number of students that are accounting majors. Wow. So I worked for a CPA firm. It's probably the same in engineering. I don't know for a fact, but a lot of those higher level professional type positions, the students aren't being encouraged to go to that. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings or be disrespectful, but they are pushing them to things like communications. Communications doesn't really prepare you for the things that some of us need in this building, in this room. We need specialized, high-level professional training and education in the folks that we can move through the process and then move them into the next level and promote them like Jade was talking about. It's hard to find those folks. Like I said before, from out of state, we don't have any little niche places in the county anymore or the city to say, look for a place there. There just aren't any. So it's a real challenge, but we are very much exploiting every avenue that we can. We've got a schematic of who's going to which job fair and what we're doing and who we're seeing, and then debriefing about, well, what did you see? Was this worth our time and effort? Was this worth the cost to sign up for that job fair? And if it's not, then we've got a finite budget too. We're going to put our money where we're most likely to get good recruits.
Is the city unique in that regard? I mean, as you make your rounds talking to other municipal finance officials from either around the county or around the nation, are we unique in that regard?
Not at all.
Okay.
Speak to that.
We're all seeing the same issue in finance in the local government field, and potentially the school district field as well, because we're lumped together as government. So we are all seeing the same thing.
And it's not just finance, it's engineering. Mm-hmm. Engineering is very difficult to find those types of skills because they can make so much more in the private sector. Mm-hmm. But they don't have what we have. They don't have what we have. Leah was talking about irrigation techs. There's a young man that I love to talk to. He left the private sector. He was making $35 an hour. He came to us at 22 or something, but he wanted to start a family. He wanted to have retirement. He's now having a second child. He's looking for a home. All of those kinds of things that we've got to get that word out there. But to Jade's point, also moving them up, taking and growing them and moving them up. That's one of my favorite things is when I see somebody get promoted. That and making a job offer on a Friday afternoon.
Did you have a follow-up, Mr. President?
Thank you. And this is an excellent discussion because it's a way for us to potentially avoid those headhunter fees. You get people early introduced to government. Maybe they come in early and stay for their whole careers. We don't necessarily have to pull from some other business where we're paying top dollar to begin with, because if you're starting at entry level, obviously you don't want everyone being entry level, but bringing in and making sure that you're constantly having some entry level coming into the system. So excellent discussion. And I know that I never would have been exposed to government work. It wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for starting very young as a police explorer with the Village of North Palm Beach and a volunteer firefighter. And then I learned about government. And I'm like, hey, this is pretty cool. And government's really a great place to work. And there's so many different aspects of government that there's usually a place for everyone. And so if we could maybe even look at not just working with the local universities, as Commissioner Ward suggested, but also, I don't know if we're having our own career fairs, but that would be fantastic if you could pick, time of the year where it's kind of cool out and have booths where every department's out in the courtyard and people can come, or wherever, and they can come learn about the different departments and opportunities and vacancies within the city. We don't necessarily even have to just rely on other entities' career fairs. We could do our own, invite the local universities, and I'm sure there'd be a tremendous response.
Ms. Mahaso?
One of the things that we've done from my office, because I think we're in the same boat as finance, there is no bachelor's degree in auditing. So what I have done is establish a relationship with FAU, which actually created a auditing course, and keeping in touch with them. I think twice a year they'll have an event where they'll ask us to come in and speak a little bit about what we do. And I sit there and I promote what we do and how exciting it is, because I do think it's exciting. I'm probably the only one here. But I think what we do is very exciting and it's different and you're learning something different. But even if we've been to some of the career fairs, no one approaches and says, oh my gosh, what is auditing about? It's just not entertaining to anyone. But I feel like, if we put ourselves up there and we are open and friendly, people are much more welcoming of us. And I think that we've had a lot of students from FAU who wanted to learn more about auditing. And what I found is that they ended up going to the private sector because they could get paid more money. And then in my position, I also can't hire someone who is completely entry level because of our workload, and I need a higher skill set. So then what I asked to do, and I got permission to add a position, was to say, let me bring in an administrative assistant, train that person, and see if I can have that person move up throughout their career as a way to help bring in somebody who is more entry level, but without necessarily taking out a bigger budget and having to train that person.
Dr. Murray?
Yes, and to your point, Commissioner Ward, I think it's probably more akin to the legal field, but we within the city attorney's office have relationships with University of Miami, Nova, and several of the law schools, and we've hosted many L2, L3 law students and gave credits instead of money. Some of the local government Florida Bar type associations also give scholarships so that local governments can pay over the summer. And we have not received one of those grants yet, but we've had several folks. And in fact, I think we were able to hire one who became a staff attorney and left us. But for the most part, we do engage in that practice through the legal field.
Yes, Mr. Jones?
We have also, we really haven't, I would say, gone after the colleges as much, but we have enough people coming to us. A lot of times it's employees. My son wants to get into IT. And so it's really, there's tremendous value in that, but there's only so many positions that can be filled like that. But it's the exposure, because most people's concept of IT is a lot narrower than it actually is. And so we really look forward to the opportunity to bring people in and show them the scope, what do you want to do? Because if you look around, there's a part of IT that can do that. But usually, like I said, they come in and we look at that as, again, complementary. What are the things that we can have somebody do? Because we also have found, what's one of the challenges when you get out of college? Can't get a job because I don't have experience. Can't get experience because I can't get a job. So that's an opportunity to give them some experience. So we do try to leverage that.
Follow up, Commissioner?
Well, a separate question. Can
That's fine.
Yeah. Mr. Jones, now that you responded, so I wanted to go back. First of all, I didn't realize that we had 51 FTEs in your department. That's larger than I thought. And I do appreciate, Mr. Johnson, your commentary. I know how important IT is, and we don't want to be susceptible to attack. What constitutes the citywide contracts under the contractual services? What really encompasses that? I mean, that's a bigger budgetary item.
That's, like I said earlier, what that really involves is we support and manage all the enterprise applications, which Oracle is extremely expensive, Microsoft are expensive applications, Kronos, everything that's used at the city as a whole. And again, there's long-term support for that, there's security support for that. Additionally, if you look at the infrastructure, we have hundreds of servers, we've got hundreds of firewalls. Every one of those require contracts, they require support, they require updates. And from the security perspective, I mean, we have vendors that help monitor systems. Again, that's that complementary outsourcing. We have tools that we absolutely have to use to be able to identify any activity. So it's a broad spectrum of things, but it's really, it's not niceties, it's necessities. Because if you don't have those, and one of the biggest challenges, and I've seen it so many times in my career, because if you don't maintain, you're going to get hurt. And so that's really a lot of those contracts, a lot of that complementary outsourcing. And I'll just say, when we first came in, we were way behind on everything. 11 versions on Oracle, and it costs a heck of a lot more money to get there. And so if you've got to stay, I kind of look at it. One time I had somebody question it, and I said, look, go look at the automobiles. What do you do to support the automobiles? One, you got to replace them. Two, you got a garage. You got all the parts. You've got all that. It's the same thing with technology. You've got to replace. If you don't, you're going to be in 5-10 years. You're going to be where you don't have a choice. And so that's really what a lot of that is, in addition to the application support across the city. But even when you look at, and I was talking about how broad IT is. I mean, we have systems analysts, we have project managers, we have, it's not the people in the data center. It's much, much broader than that. If you look, you heard about all the applications that we may be bringing on, we support them. And we'll continue to do that to make sure that, and we're not the subject matter experts, but we're certainly the technical aspects. And it's that partnership that makes these things work.
Follow up. And I can't help but think, I know this is more of a budget discussion than departments, but just being at Tomorrow City recently and hearing a lot of the focus was really IT centered, but really more on not information, but innovation. And so are you seeing a twist in your department in and of itself, kind of leaning towards more innovation discussions rather than reactionary, more information technology discussions? And how does that maybe impact again, going down the list of budgetary hits, you reign, I think, very high in how much this is actually costing us. Yeah.
Absolutely, positively. I mean, again, as I said, when we first got here, we were way behind. So it took years to get where we are, but we're there. We're close to there. I don't want to say there. We're in position now where we're going to move forward, and that's really why I got into technology. I didn't get in it to keep things running. We got to move forward, and we've got big initiatives going right now with AI. We've got beta tests happening, and it will revolutionize the way things work. And when you look at AI, you've got the application specific, and then you have the generic, ChatGPT, Copilot, and those things will make a difference in people's day-to-day work life. Now, everybody gets concerned about, is this going to replace somebody? Well, our mantra is, we're not trying to do more with less, we're trying to do more with the same, because just what you heard here, everybody has more on their plate than they can do. AI will make a difference in that area. for that question. But
So, Paul, when you say when you got here, you came in 2019, so that's when we start building up.
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And I don't want to take all the credit because they were beginning the build up before we got here. But
No, you can take all the credit. Questions, additional questions? Mr. Front, you about to say something?
Not trying to extend the meeting longer, but the efficiency question that was posed to the last group, I think if we don't answer that, we would be doing a disservice. So I also want to maybe editorialize a little bit before talking about efficiency. The departments that are here right now are different than the service agents that you've talked to. So we serve our residents, but we also serve our internal departments. And we all, back room, back office, stay over there, nobody is boring. But we also directly attribute the work that is done on the service level that goes out. And we take pride in how we serve the departments and the residents as well. And we collaboratively work together to problem solve some of the issues within the departments. So there's not a day that goes by where I'm not calling Paul going, hey, I heard about this. How do we figure this out? How do we work together to get, my printer and accounts payable is down again. I have to cut checks for people. We have to get this moving. It is constant conversations between us on how we serve the departments. So to that end, efficiency is often expected to have your systems, and we definitely in finance have a piece with that. But in my tenure here, we've been focusing on communication and collaboration with the departments, our internal departments and the service departments as well. We have a lot of our departments that have monthly meetings with our AP staff. What invoices are hung up? What's going on? What are we missing? And if we don't have anything, then we don't need to have the meeting. But having that touch point, whether it's with HR and payroll or benefit issues, we have a monthly meeting with IT, the same type of thing. What hurdles are we having? Public Works, HCD. We have those meetings to make sure we are removing the barriers that staff may have along the process. And we work together on the efficiencies relative to systems. In finance and working with IT, we have been using Spreadsheet Server, which the best way that I can communicate that is an overlay in Excel. And Oracle, our financial software, is very robust, but it is static data. So if I dump out real data from Oracle into Excel, I have to remove all these title lines, headers, lines that I can't manipulate the data until I remove it. Spreadsheet Server is like a better version of macros where you can set up a template report or a template analytics that I run regularly. And I just click a refresh button and set it up once, and it brings us the real-time data at that moment. So that has been a game changer in finance. And we worked with Paul to actually bring in additional training because we realized how important it was for our staff, because I'm down about 4 accountants going into the audit, that we had to have additional understanding of how do we utilize this tool. And that's what I love with Paul's response is always, we have these tools, we need to make sure we're using it to the best of our ability to gain what we can out of these tools. And he's been amazing working with us on that. And so that has changed. Every division is using Spreadsheet Server in some format, cutting down on manual data entry and making analytics easier. And then you have Copilot, ChatGPT, whatever. We are using different versions of that throughout finance for different ways, whether it's we have a new contract that is in place in CRA or HCD. We need to monitor that the revenues are coming in. So we have Copilot read the contract, pull out the terms, get it into a tracking mechanism where now in a succinct form, all of the contracts, we know it expires here. And this is when this payment escalator comes into play. And we're using it to stay better organized, make sure that more eyes can see the same information, and be more efficient because the workload is where it's at right now.
I'll add to Bridget, if I may, just to quickly say, yes, I think for all of us, all of the service departments, the internal service departments, we make ourselves available to the user departments, the rest of the city, so that if they need standing meetings or don't, we make sure we set that time aside so that we can create the collaboration between the different various divisions, because everything that they do and they touch, we have a piece in. But it's behind the scenes, is it the contracts or the regulations that have to be put in place? We always want to make sure that we serve our user departments correctly. We too, lawyers are a little more standoffish as it relates to AI and using those resources. Even the judges require that you disclose any AI you use and that you certify that, in fact, that you double checked and made sure that the information you're using is appropriate. But I can say we recently engaged in a 30-day trial period with Westlaw for an AI co-counsel tool, and I was pleasantly surprised how robust that information was. And if you just use it as a horn book, at least if it's a new niche area, it probably saved at least 6 hours of research time to gather that information to start from. So I think that there are some useful tools out there, and I will be getting with IT to make sure that it's okay before we go down that path to use that extra tool from Westlaw and maybe cut some things out that we don't need as much, but that those tools and resources are out there. I think that Westlaw is also providing a contract tool that it'll take all of the rules and regulations, federal regs, and look at it and make sure that your contract has everything in it that it's supposed to, things like that. So there are going to be some amazing resources available for us that we can use too.
Mr. Jones and Ms. Mahaso.
Yeah, when we first started the AI initiative, I don't know if it was like, here's what you don't do, here's the problems, here's the concerns, and that legitimately needed to be there because there are concerns. But what we're seeing now is we're seeing the concerns are diminishing a little bit, but then the results are increasing. So it's a fast moving technology. And again, I feel like from IT perspective, our job is to give people the tools and equipment to do that. And the better tools and equipment that we give, the better off we're all going to be. And AI is a tool. In fact, I quit calling it a tool, I call it a toolbox, because it's what do you want to do? And we've been working with departments, and we're going to continue to work with departments, introducing it. In fact, I'm working with Nancy coming up here. It is a tool that will make a difference, probably the biggest difference I've seen in my career. So, but it's like anything. If it isn't done right, it won't be an advantage, it'll be a harm. And there are a lot of things that we're doing. You have to have testing, you have to have training, you have to have things, you have to know, because AI's job is to give you an answer. And sometimes if it doesn't know the answer, guess what? It makes one up. And so that's what you have to watch. But as long as that human element, which is critical, is part of it, it will make a difference in the work world, in our work world.
Well, one of the first things that I had Paul do, 2 or 3 years ago, when AI was just coming on the scene, is to help us as a city put in what I call guardrails. We were a very early adopter of an AI policy, but that was designed, I think, at Paul's recommendation to figure out how do we control the use of it. But I equate it to, when you're on a freeway, you certainly have guardrails to kind of keep people from running off the road, but it enables people to go a lot faster. And I think with the guardrails that we put in place under Paul's direction, we are now able to, put the pedal to the metal, so to speak, with the use and get the positives out of AI as a city operation. So thank you, Paul. Ms. Mahaso.
We've also jumped on the bandwagon with the AI within auditing, and it's throughout auditing, not just within our office, but we're certainly seeing that it can provide great efficiencies. And when you're short-staffed, for us, it's not that it's going to decrease the amount of staff that we need. It's just going to allow us to get through a lot more projects much faster. Our communication will probably be clearer and maybe more precise than what we had before. And it won't take nearly as long to get through a contract that we're reviewing. Well, you know, what is it that they owe us? Are they meeting this particular standard? I mean, what it can do within seconds would have taken us hours. And I know I've got one person on my team who has just absolutely loved it and created some fantastic things out of it. And then we were able to take, okay, well, if we give that to the department, that's going to seem very overwhelming. But is it very, very accurate? Yes. Does it still need the human interaction to verify it? Absolutely. So nothing is going to go out without us taking a look and doing our own independent assessment to say, okay, do we agree with the results that are coming out of it? So that has really helped us. The other area that my team has focused on, because we're slightly different, is where are the cost savings that we can identify? Are there any efficiencies that we can gain? And when I look at cost savings, I tell my team, we've got to be able to pay for ourselves somehow. So as we're doing these audits, where can we help them? And I think Commissioner Fox said we should be looking under every pillow cushion. And I understand that sentiment. We should be looking and doing the very best that we can. And there are certain audits that are not necessarily dollars assigned to it, especially when I think of IT. It's not necessarily that you have a hard dollar that you can put in your audit report, but whatever we're identifying and the safeguards that we're putting in place, it helps us tomorrow to prevent something catastrophic going wrong. So that's one of the things that my team knows day in and day out. Find a way to pay for yourself.
We're good. Commissioner Ward, I think you asked the initial efficiency question, so I just want to make sure you felt that you were getting the answer from this group that you
I didn't even have to prompt it, and they just already wanted to talk about it, so it was great. Thank you.
They're smart people. Okay. Any other questions? Ms. Johnson? Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Warren?
Well, the first thing is a comment, and just what Ms. Govik said, really resonating with the workforce in affordable housing and not being able to recruit the staff that we need because of affordability, and just kind of challenging us to, and I know that we lead in workforce and affordable housing, but I'm wondering what innovative approaches we can have outside of downtown that could incentivize developers to want to build the housing supplies that we need, particularly when we're looking at the challenges that our staff faces. And to what Ms. Mahaso stated, I've also been thinking about how we're spending the dollars that we have, and what we're doing and what we can do better. And the thing that I don't think has been answered for me for years, and I keep asking the question, I don't know where that answer comes from. What is the amount that we pay on staff per gallon for gas on site? What does that cost to us?
The staff per gallon?
Not to staff. What is the cost per gallon for gas on site?
No, like at the fuel terminal?
From the fuel terminal.
Do you know what that answer is?
We have Mr. Pender here. I don't know if he has what we pay, because I think we're part of the cooperative where we get gas at a discounted rate, but I'll let the subject matter expert
For city vehicles. Okay, just checking.
Leon Pender, Public Works Director, but no, I do not have that in front of me right now. I can get you that information, but we are part of a co-op agreement where we get our gas at a discounted rate. And as a matter of fact, as of like 2 weeks ago, we're looking at another company that said that they can beat the rate that we're currently getting through a co-op. So we're looking into that to see if there's value to that, and we'll bring it back.
I keep asking this question because I don't know that it has ever really been answered anytime that I've asked it. And what I would like to know is what that actually is. And I don't know, I know that we don't have that answer right now, but I would like for us to look at that, because we do need to look at how we're spending the city and the citizens' tax dollars. So what is the cost per gallon for gas on site for our vehicles? Where are we using credit cards to purchase gas? And what does that cost look like when gas is purchased off-site? And are we in a position to have better procedures and policies in place requiring that we are utilizing the on-site fuel stations versus off-site? And, is that going to be something that can be significant, even if it's not hugely significant? I think that it is something that I would like the answer to. What does it look like for the gas that we're buying that is not on site? What is the cost for gas on site? And how do we reel it in and have control over how those cards are used?
Well, let me first, apologize. If you have consistently asked that question and we've not answered it, I've not programmed those questions, so we will be certain to get that answer. But I think it's important to look at this into context. The gas that the city purchased, as part of the co-op, we're getting it at a cheaper price than what we would just pay at the pump. And so we can get that. If there is a distinction between departments that fill up at the pump and then those who choose to fill up outside of the pump, that's where there would be cost savings, and we certainly can track that data. But if we have missed that, that's an oversight, and we'll correct that because that's data that is readily available. So we will certainly get that to not just to you, but for the entire commission. But in general, we purchase gas at a discount being part of the co-op because we're buying in volume. But we'll get those answers.
And on that point, either Mr. Pender or you, Jose Luis, can you talk about the recent investment in the updated equipment that we have at the fuel terminal, which will also help us to monitor efficiency and use?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Jose Luis Rodriguez, Assistant City Administrator. The biggest project that Public Works has completed, which you toured the other day, Mr. Mayor, is the fuel island, which is where all the pumps are. Was totally rebuilt and upgraded. So now we have brand new fuel pumps, above storage fuel tanks, which are safer and easier to maintain than below ground storage tanks. The new fuel pumps and software associated with them, it's easier for people to log in and go in there and fill up their tanks. It allows us to track, more efficiently the fuel that is being used. And in addition to not only the fuel island, but in the fleet maintenance area themselves, we've had upgrade to equipment that has automated some functions that required physical labor before. For example, and Leon can probably speak to it better, but when you replace a tire, we were using human physical power to roll that tire, lift it up, put it on the vehicle, take it down. Now we have an automated machine that basically just lifts the tire for you. All you have to do is push the machine to the vehicle. So that speeds up the process, makes it safer to work. So those were some of the upgrades that we've done. But we are always looking at ways to improve efficiencies. And we are always looking at ways to reduce cost, and fuel is, certainly one of those areas. I would just put as a caveat that as much as we encourage and we request departments to use the fuel island to fill up, there are some functions that don't lend themselves to that because it would actually be more expensive. For example, if you have a police officer and they happen to be way out west, it's going to cost them probably more to drive all the way over here to fuel up if they're out of fuel than if they just fill up where they are doing their patrol. So those are it's kind of a balancing act of you try to encourage as many people as possible to use our fuel to reduce costs, but then there are some operations that because they're bouncing around the city boundaries all day, they will have to inevitably, fuel at gas stations. And if I'm incorrect in anything, Mr. Leon Pinder can correct me.
Thank you. And my point to that is about the protocols, and people come downtown every day. So if we're looking at our vehicles and monitoring when we leave the grounds, we should be able to see that we're on a quarter tank of gas and we're going to be working out west and doing all of these things. So it just requires a certain amount of accountability to ensure that you have what you need here on site before we go out into the field, because at some point we really need to look at those dollars and whether or not there is a savings if we have protocols in place.
Point well taken, and we will do so.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right, yes.
I mentioned this back when I was commission president, and I'd just like to hear from my colleagues. Again, at one point, I recommended that the commission have its own legal counsel, and I still think that that's something that we should consider, whether or not we have someone that advises the commission outside of administration's scope.
Not to be rude and interject, but can I go to the commission's budget and mirror, and because that's designed for you all to then, and we can keep the city attorney, but if I can just wrap up those and then it's turned over to the commission and the mayor, for then you all to have, that discussion, if I can, Mayor.
No, yes, that's
All right,
the
so
third
let
part
me,
of it.
yeah, so we can wrap up. Staff, with the exception of the city attorney, you all can lead the panel.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you,
Thank
staff.
you.
So again, as I indicated, the mayor and the commission, you all sort of serve in dual capacities. And while your budget numbers may be dialed into internal governance, we know that you do far more than that. And I'll just skip that part and go right to the commission office. Annual budget is $1 million. A little over half of that is discretionary of $520,000. There are no contractual obligations within the commission's budget. And then moving on to the last overview is mayor's office, which include administration. That budget is $7 million. The lion's share of it, 73% of $5 million is discretionary, which equates to, let's see how many position that relates to. 31 positions for the mayor's office. And then there are terminable discretionary funding within the mayor's budget to the tune of $638,000 if I were to round it. So putting that into context, we'll now turn it over, Mayor, to you and the commission to have your discussion.
Questions? Commissioner Ward?
And this may just be my misunderstanding, but when you broke it down on slide 13 of every different department, mayor's office is at 8.934, but then you just showed 7.0 roughly in the mayor's office.
Say that again, please.
On the breakdown on slide 13 of every department, it showed mayor's office at 8.9, and then on the actual page, it shows a little over 7.
Okay, I need to look at. Okay, you can answer it. You can go to the, yeah, I need to just pinpoint the differential that you're making so I can help chime in.
Yes, Jose Luis Rodriguez again, Assistant City Administrator. We're looking through that, but there are some, in this slide presentation, there are some areas that have been pulled out that are not rolled up like in the chart. For example, the city attorney's office, the mayor's office also in this pie chart doesn't include non-general fund areas as well, like CRA.
The CRA cost center that rolls up into the mayor's budget was removed.
Right.
I'm sorry, what?
The CRA cost center that is funded with the CRA dollars that come into the general fund.
Cost center meaning like personnel cost?
Meaning part of that part of the budget
Okay.
is pulled out. And so this $7 million is only general fund funded operations.
Gotcha.
So not any CRA or any other special funds that may somehow be in the mayor's office budget are not included in that $7 million. Since the
So
discussion
that
is on-
1.9 million delta is probably money from
Yeah.
the CRA then?
Yeah,
Okay.
because this is a discussion on how you can modify the general fund budget, not all of the other special fund budgets.
Okay.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I left my internal governance breakdown at the desk and didn't have it here, so that's why I was thrown off.
All right, questions, commissioners? Commissioner Fox?
Thank you. I have more of a comment than a question, but in the last budget meeting, one of the suggestions I had was talking about advertising in the garage, and since that time I walking down Clematis Street, I remember we, about a year ago, implemented the kiosks that are on Clematis Street. They're supposed to, theoretically, there's advertising revenue coming as a split to us. I'm not sure what department that is, but when I look at the mayor's department, many of the terminable discretionary dollars in yellow are communication expenses. And so I just was thinking again about, I don't like the idea of ever eliminating any positions. I'd rather look for new ways to find revenue. So, just in terms of advertising, my suggestion the other day in the garage and thinking about these kiosks, when I drive down Okeechobee, I look at the Kravis Center and how they have an electric billboard, and also the convention center does. We could be doing something similar where we have many properties that we could be having advertising revenue around the city, and it's just a suggestion to look at. It doesn't help us at all for this year, but seeing at how many line items we have going towards communication expenses and branding initiatives and things like that. We have a new brand. You go to PBIA and there's Palm Beach, T-shirts for sale for $50. Well, why can't we have West Palm Beach T-shirts? We are a destination on the map that people are visiting. I think there's a lot of ways we could be capitalizing on it and that we're not currently doing. It doesn't help, with this budget cycle, but I just, it looks like we already have a lot of expenses going towards the creation of some of these marketing campaigns that we could actually be putting those to work to have revenue in the future as well. So it's just a comment.
Yeah, I think there certainly is an opportunity. Now, this is and I want to say second, maybe it came in at mid-year, where we've had, a dedicated marketing officer. So if we're looking citywide in terms of opportunities for the general fund to come up with marketing initiatives, I see, that as an opportunity for that to be led under that staff person. The point that we were trying to make as it relates to the garage, because it's the parking and mobility fund, it will go there. But for general fund opportunities, certainly that's something we can look at down the road.
Other questions or comments? Do we want to, I don't know, commissioners, do you want to address the comment from your fellow commissioner on the?
Yeah, I would like to talk, Mayor, about it. I don't necessarily have an objection. I think it could be helpful having someone who is dedicated, an attorney who's dedicated just to the legislative function that we have as commissioners. I think this has been a discussion, not to offend anyone, Mayor. This has been a discussion that's gone on from what I understand, many, many years, long before any of us were commissioners, maybe not before the mayor was a commissioner. But I think it has been suggested of having an attorney for the commission for some time. I would like to hear from my colleagues, but I don't have an objection to it.
Let's hear from the city attorney on what the charter will allow. I mean, I don't know if such a position was created, whether that required charter change or not. I don't know. Do you want to weigh in on that, Madam City Attorney, to the extent that your opinion
to the best of my ability, I would like to say that the office of the city attorney is the attorney for the city. And when we went through the budget discussion that we just had, one of the things that I identified for you was that we have lawyers who handle the litigation for the city, and we have transactional lawyers who do the legislative function for the city. So if it's the thought of the commission that they're not receiving the legal advice that the city needs, or that they need something in addition, and my office or our office, your office, can't serve you, then I think that the code does allow the city attorney to hire additional staff as needed, when needed, for things that can't be done through the office. So the city attorney is the city attorney that's created in the charter, and it's the attorney for the city. The commission is the legislative arm of the city. this office, the city attorney's office, it's established, serves you as well as the executive function. It's not one or the other. It's supposed to be both. So what I would say to you, and I would hope that you feel free to talk to me at any time, if you feel like you're not getting something that you need, I would like to have at least the opportunity to help fulfill where it is that you think you're missing something. If there is something, or if it's just a general idea, it'd be nice to have a lawyer in our office. Generally speaking, any lawyers who are hired for the city still report to the city attorney, because it's the city attorney who provides the legal advice and counsel to the city. That's just a start.
Question. Madam City Attorney, is there anything in our charter that you're aware of that would preclude the City Commission from hiring outside counsel that is specifically hired with regard to their legislative duties?
I just want to understand what legislative duty. I mean, in our code and in not specifically in the charter, because the charter is like the guiding document, and then within the code itself, it says that all resolutions and ordinances, the legislative function of the commission, have to be reviewed by the city attorney or the office of the city attorney. So I think I'm having a disconnect with what it is you feel that you want. I don't think there's something that says that we can't hire the sufficient number of legal counsel necessary to provide the legal services needed for the city. No, I don't think that there's something that says no, that you cannot do that.
I don't think that's the question that was posed by Commissioner Warren. She can correct me if I'm not accurately depicting her question, but I don't think it's that we want just another staff member assigned to us or the ability to have better someone available, to meet our needs. It's probably more of an independent voice for the commission. And I don't mean independent meaning, it's still a legal opinion, but legal opinions can differ. And I think that's probably what Commissioner Warren was suggesting, and am I correct?
That is correct. And it's not about the competency of the staff that we have. I do believe that we have an amazing team. It is about the independence of the council to be able to, similarly to the auditor, someone else within the organization that does not fall under the executive branch.
The legal advice under your charter for the city and the city commission is the city attorney. So if you were to hire a lawyer that gave a different opinion, the city attorney's opinion is the opinion for which the city is supposed to operate. It's a charter position.
And that is understood.
Now, with that being said, is there a caveat to that you can give us legal advice, but we don't have to follow it?
We always give you legal advice, and it's your option to follow or not follow the legal advice that you're given. We don't tell you, no, you can't do it. We tell you this is what the law says, and these are the ramifications if you do or don't do a particular thing. And that's up to you as a body to decide whether or not to adhere to that advice.
So I think what we're talking about here is the opportunity to have a second legal opinion that comes from a place other than the city attorney's office. Whether that's necessary or not, I'd like to continue that discussion. This has been something that's been discussed probably for 20 years, but there, as Commissioner Warren said, there's never been any action taken on it, but I think this is good to have a robust discussion about it, because I don't think we've ever done this.
Part of that discussion should probably include funding for it. Because
I think that's why we're having it now.
If resources come from the city, then I think you need to follow whatever's in the ordinances or on the charter. Now, if you guys are going to raise your own money and pay for it yourselves, I guess we don't have anything to do with that. But I think funding should be part of that same discussion.
And public purpose, ultimately, right? All expenditures of funding should be for a public purpose, and whether or not there is a need for this additional opinion on anything in particular. If there was something that came up that you all felt as a commission we didn't have the expertise for, then perhaps there is. But think about from the public purpose, what is the purpose for the additional expenditure if in fact you're receiving as a body all of the legal advice that you need on any particular matter unless there's something that's awry.
I will say when I was a commissioner, there were a couple of specific issues that I think the city commission hired an attorney for, but it wasn't a matter of general course. And then that quickly dissipated over time. But I think there were only like 2 or 3 specific issues where the commission itself hired an attorney separate from the city attorney. Commissioner Warren.
I'm challenged with the notion that we would need to find the funding for the council should we decide to move forward with council, because I believe that a primary function of this body is to determine the allocations and approve the budget. So that is a part of what our job is to look at the funds that we have and determine whether or not what has been proposed is being best utilized in our opinions. And that's why I put it out there that I want us to look at whether or not this is something that we should consider as we look at the budget in its totality.
Commissioner Ward.
I mean, I guess I would need to understand the cost allocation of having another FTE on legal side. I think I understand the ask of wanting the separation between executive and legislative as far as understanding routes. I think that I lean heavily on my background, and I think President Peduzzi, you do as well, when it comes to some of the interpretation, and that's a benefit that I have personally that not the others do have, and I know that that is a concern, especially when we're talking about some of the contract negotiation, interpretation of ordinances, how this is perceived. So I get the ask, and I understand that perspective of it, and I don't know everything that government, day to day, what you do, and you're always giving advice, and so I don't look at it from a standpoint of, yes, you're always able and you always answer and you're always there. I just think what they're trying to say is that separation of where it's coming from, who it can hire and fire and things like that. But I think the first step would be to understand what actually that cost would be. Is that $250,000? Is that what would that be? And I think that you need to start there first to understand if this is even feasible.
And I guess another question is, under the charter, all personnel reports to the mayor. Am I correct?
That is correct.
So if money is pulled out of the budget to pay for another personnel, how do you avoid the question as to who that person responds to? Because there's nothing in the charter that says that, with the exception of the internal auditor.
Right.
There's nothing in the charter that says that there is a position that will report specifically to the city commission as opposed to the mayor. Commissioner Peduzzi, President Peduzzi.
Thank you. I think if we went in this direction, which I don't necessarily, as I said, have an objection to, I think we wouldn't be adding an FTE. It would probably be funding to be able to, as the mayor said, it's been done in the past, that there's been precedent for hiring counsel in a specific situation if it arises. Whether that's putting $100,000 aside or whatever it might be, just to have the ability to hire what we would consider more independent counsel, just like has probably or likely been done in the past when you were a commissioner, Mayor. There was obviously, you said a couple of times that you as a body felt that there was some benefit to having an independent legal opinion rendered on a given issue. And I think that's probably what we're looking at here, is the just ability to do the same.
But if you're going to use general fund dollars to pay for a position, an employee, I guess, a contractor, I'm not sure the charter allows that position to report to someone other than the mayor.
May I comment, Mayor?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's a prime example of why we might need someone independently to review the charter and see what.
Well, who's
whether
going to
we
pay
have-
for it? Who's going to pay for it?
Right. Other than Commissioner Ward and myself looking at the charter as lawyers and figuring out, or asking the city attorney to re-review it and, see if it's something that is within our purview to be able to do. I know that it was done in the past. I don't know if those same objections were brought by the administration in the past, but you yourself said that it has been done before.
Yeah, but I think it fell apart for that very reason, because there was a funding issue as who was going to pay for it. Commissioner Fox.
Thank you, Mayor. I would say, when you say who's going to pay for it, well, who pays for everything else? The residents. And so I think the public purpose here is just like the auditor, that this is an independent voice that can ensure that there is independence in the city commission votes and our decision making. And so I think this is probably one of the most important things that we could fund, in my opinion. And I don't think we necessarily need to have someone on staff, but to look at a consultant. There are many cities that don't have city attorneys, and there are government specialists out there. So I would support this.
But they don't have a charter that provides for a strong mayor form of government, and that charter specifically provides that all personnel report to the strong mayor, with the exception of the internal auditor. The internal auditor is created by the charter. You're talking about creating or paying out of general funds of the city, and the general funds of the city are governed by the charter, and therefore ordinances and resolutions adopted pursuant to the charter. Those expenditures are authorized, and so I don't know how you comport the two, where you say all employees, and presumably employees of somebody's going to be paid by the city, report to the mayor. And then you're saying, well, we want to use city funds to pay for somebody who doesn't report to the mayor. Where's the authorization in the charter for that expenditure? President Peduzzi.
And I'm not sure of the answer to that question because I haven't reviewed the charter recently. So I certainly will do that. And hopefully the city attorney will do the same, and she can give us her opinion on that. But we also could put a line item in our city commission budget that isn't necessarily for legal counsel, that's just consultant, that we could put in there. It's an amount to put a consultant on retainer, whether it be legal, whether it be something else, but just have a line item there of a set amount of money, and then we can determine the legality of it after. I don't know if there's a way of us budgeting for something and putting a line item in there when we're not 100% certain whether it will pass muster under the charter.
We can certainly take a look at it. And I believe that the last person who was hired to give a legal opinion was hired through the office of the city attorney, because that's the office who does the hiring of legal counsel through the charter and through the code to provide legal services to the city as a whole. There is no separation. This city of West Palm Beach operates in both a legislative and an executive capacity, and it's the responsibility of the position to provide good, sound legal advice on both fronts, not one or the other.
And I think if the drafters of the charter anticipated there being a need or a difference between administrative and executive, they could have provided, just as they did for the internal auditor, a provision for the city commission, the legislative body, to have their own legal counsel. They clearly anticipated a situation where there would be some staff, a staff person, that would report directly to the commission, as opposed to the mayor. That was the internal auditor. If they thought there was a need for somebody else to report directly to the commission and not to the mayor, presumably they could have created it. Or if you're proposing doing a charter change, I guess you could go forth with that as well. But we're not there yet.
And I'm happy to look, too, to see across the state of Florida how many commissions have a separate legal counsel outside of their city attorney, if any, and I'll report that back to you as well.
President Peduzzi.
Thank you. I would appreciate that, and maybe if we could just, re-review the charter and see because it's probably been a little while since any of us have looked at it, maybe not the city attorney. Maybe she looks at it every morning. I don't know.
I look at it as many times as it's necessary to do so in order to provide good, sound legal advice to the city of West Palm Beach, which is created by virtue of the city commission and the mayor.
No, we appreciate that response and the fact that you do that. And I would just ask that maybe we reschedule this for further discussion at the next, if it's agreeable to you, Mayor, maybe at the next commission work session or at a next budget hearing, whenever you deem it to be appropriate. But I think we do need to review it and have a follow-up discussion.
Well, you certainly get the advice of the city attorney. Once that's issued, then we'll schedule it for you all to have a further discussion.
Thank you, Mayor.
I don't have any mayor's matters. Anything for the good of the order? I'm sorry, Ms. Johnson, when you completed with the budget
Well,
presentation?
I was going to go through next steps, but.
No,
if you
go
all-
ahead, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. All righty. So wrapping up here in terms of where we are headed. So I just want to put the three categories into context of the FY27 budget to be built. So in the at-will discretionary category, here is where the board is going to see potential increases. The employees that are non-union, typically we do the 3% COLA, as well as for the elected officials. And then because the PMSA and SEIU contracts end this fiscal year, we're in negotiations, so that whether or not we get to a contract for FY27, which would require COLAs, it's indicated right now as discretionary. And then travel, training, and memberships. Those increases that may be in the budget will be at the board's discretion to say we're not going to fund them if you get in the position where we need to look at operational reductions. The next category of terminable discretionary items where you're going to see increases, it would be in the service contracts. And we've just mentioned some of them earlier that we have, like landscaping, different consultants, maintenance agreements. All of those or any one could be canceled, and then we would just calculate the savings based on when we get to the 30-day or 60-day or 90-day provision based on the notice of cancellation of the contract. Where the cost drivers will come into the budget will be in the mandatory non-discretionary category. And that is under the contract right now with FOP and IAFF Fire, which does not end until the end of FY27. We are contractually required. We have an increase in the pension multiplier that we knew was going to bring higher costs into the FY27 budget. Their 5% step pay, and then the COLAs that are under those contracts, those are going to be increased cost drivers for FY27, as well as the various health and property insurance, workers' compensation, and then our liability insurance costs. Typically, go up every year. And then under the FOP CBA, we are contractually required to replace their vehicles once they hit a certain number of years or a certain mileage. So those will be mandatory costs that you will see come into the FY27 budget that we will have to fund. And then moving on to where we had. So in teeing this up, the discussion that the board has had today, hopefully that will help shape your decisions for the June 5th work session, where we will have the first blush of what the expenditure increases will look like for FY27, as well as the revenue increases. So the board will have a good sense of where we stand in terms of operating increases and the operating revenue, and then we will factor in, or you will then factor in what level of a millage reduction, if that would be needed, and then operating reductions again if needed. And I'm going to underscore again that I'm cautiously optimistic that we won't get into the position of having to make operating reductions based on how we see the increases. But again, that will also be a factor of how deep, of a millage reduction. So everything has to be balanced. One will affect the other. Moving right along, then to June 22nd, we have the not to exceed on the millage rate. And we know that setting the not to exceed always gives the board the ability to go lower on the millage rate. So if you've not finalized the millage reduction for June 2nd, when we get to June 22nd, you still have that opportunity to lower the millage rate, because you would have set probably the current, well, not probably, the current rate as the not to exceed. Based on the discussion that comes out of the June 5th work session, we have department budget reviews with the city administrator for June 17th and 18th, and then moving right on to July 13th, where we have the final values. The board will then start looking at where we are, and then we would be in the position where we would need to then make some hard and fast decisions on the level of the millage reduction, any offsetting operating reductions that need to be made, because we're then looking at the back-end operations of loading up the budget, getting it in balance so that we can meet the statutory requirements. Before we get to the first public hearing, we have the community budget meetings dialed in for August 4th, and we always do one by Zoom and then one in person here at City Hall. Moving on to September, statutorily required budget adoption hearings, that first one on September 8th, and then the final budget adoption hearing for the general fund will be September 23rd. October 1, we're into the FY27 fiscal year, and then we move forward with moving into implementation of the budget. So with that wrap up, Mayor, I'm happy to take any additional questions that the board
Any
may
further
have.
questions for the city administrator, Commissioner Fox?
Thank you so much. Just one question. In your scenario about being cautiously optimistic, were you including COLAs in that scenario?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, so that wraps up then your...
Yes, it does. And before we wrap up, I just want to thank the commissioners and the staff. I know this is a new process that we put in place. I think that we have had healthy discussion. And, as a person who loves the budget, I couldn't be happier that we now have 2 budget processes going on. So you all have made the rest of my year. And I just want to thank everyone for your engagement in this new process. And we can refine it as we look forward to the FY28 budget, because the process has to work for the commissioners and not just for your city administrator, who is just over the moon that we now have a second budget development process in place. So thank you, staff. I want to especially thank Mr.
That sound you hear is
Rodriguez.
the mayor groaning. Okay.
All righty.
I too would like to thank staff for being prepared, opening themselves up to questions from the commissioners. Commissioners, I hope you feel that you had an opportunity early in the process to get any questions, any data that you needed to be more and better informed as we proceed with the budget discussion. And so, but staff, kudos to you for, and Ms. Johnson, Ms. Lafront, everybody who was involved with preparing even for today. Very detailed, very well thought out presentation. And so thank you. And I don't have anything under Mayor's Matters. Anybody else have anything for the good of the order? If not, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.